Belle was a pathetic adventurer who was rejected by everyone for being weak. However, after falling in love with a girl way out of his league, he trains and unlocks a god-level skill that makes him the strongest adventurer. But now all the baddies of the city want him to join their guilds to put his long sword to use. The day he met his crush, Belle was about to get wrecked by a giant minotaur, when they were interrupted by a hot blonde-haired chick. He didn't know what was more attractive, how she slayed the bullman with the least effort, or her voice when she asked if he was alright. Later, while running through the market with excitement, he yelled the name of his advisor Aina and demanded more information about his newly found soulmate. After scolding him for basically jumping into his death and telling him how he was lucky to have survived, Aina granted his wish and told him about his heartthrob Rizz. She was a level 5 adventurer and was said to be one of the strongest swordsmen in Arario. However, Aina had no idea if she was single or not, as she hadn't heard anyone speak of it. However, she encouraged him and told him ladies love guys that can protect them. So if he could work hard to get to that point, he just might have a chance. As he ran home, determined to get stronger and level up. He soon got home to meet his roommate, another hot snack named Hestia, who was the goddess of his Familia, and was head over heels with him. Hestia welcomed him with her plots hugging his body, as she told him she had a surprise for him, and showed the fried potatoes they'd have for dinner. While they ate, she spoke about her worries about being just a lazy couch potato, who isn't useful and leaves all the work to him. This was because she was a F-tier goddess no one has heard of, and this reduced her chances of getting someone to join her Familia to 0. Soon enough, it seemed as though she didn't give a damn about all that stuff, as she was giving Belle the clap me eyes and showing all the signs that she wanted the plot. However, Belle was too oblivious to notice what she was doing. Later, using magic to perform an analysis on him, Hestia told him his crush, Aes Wallenstein, was definitely out of his league, and he should instead look for the happiness that's right in front of him. She just wanted him for herself, and it seemed like a hostage situation with divine benefits, but Belle didn't mind it. However, in the analysis results, Belle's agility seemed to have increased, but his magic powers were still dead, which made him wonder if he would ever be able to use them. Suspiciously, the line for the skills section was smudged, and when he asked about it, she said her finger slipped and it was empty, just as always. As soon as he was out of sight, the goddess touched the paper, and the smudged part revealed itself to be a hidden OP ability. It was a skill that was tied to his feelings, which would allow him to grow at a rapid rate when motivated. Although he finally had a skill, it was one that rewarded him for simping, which made Hestia pissed as it took some other girl to bring it out of him and not her. The next morning, he woke up to see Hestia's huge melons rubbing on him and being cuddled by her. However, Belle wriggled out of her arms and stepped out while she called him stupid. Walking on the street, he ran into a girl who claimed he dropped a magic stone and she handed it over to him. He was confused at first because he remembered trading all of them, but he collected it and said thanks anyway. When she went ahead to ask why he was heading to the dungeon that early, his stomach gave him away, growling with hunger, so she gave him her breakfast. He objected at first, but she insisted, saying he should come eat at the pub in exchange for it, and he agreed. Belle must have thought the dungeon was Tinder, because all he thought while he was there was how long it would take him to run into his crush. Just then, a bunch of huge monsters came out to get a piece of him, but instead of running like he normally would, he remembered the chick's face and he was super motivated as he faced the monsters head on. That night, Hestia checked his stats again, and Belle was shocked to see he had leveled up and grown so quickly. He asked how it was possible, but she was too filled with jealousy and hurt to even talk to him, so she stormed out of the house in the pretense of going to a party. Belle, on the other hand, was fulfilling the promise he made to the girl from that morning, and he went to the pub. She was happy to see him, and introduced herself as Sira. He was welcomed with meals of different kinds, but he ate them regardless when he knew his flat wallet could barely afford bread. Just then, special guests walked into the pub, and his dearly beloved crush Ies was among them. He must have had pasta wiggle into his brain and turn the switch off, because he just froze at the sight of her. Circulov mentioned the Loki Familia were very consistent customers, and that gave him the idea to keep coming there for very obvious reasons. However, things took an embarrassing turn for Belle as one of the Loki members, Bette, recalled the event with the Minotaur and made a mockery of how Belle looked like a bright red tomato. As they laughed at him, he sat there in shame until the jerk was asked to shut up because it was their fault the Minotaur got there in the first place. But Bette, acting like a drunk uncle, pressed on and asked Ies to pick between him and the wimp, Belle. Just then, Belle ran out of the pub as he couldn't take it anymore, and he went into the dungeons. Surprisingly, this incident only made him even stronger and motivated, and he destroyed all the monsters that came his way. He got home the next day all battered and told Hestia passionately he wanted to get stronger. Belle was growing even stronger within a short time because of his newly acquired skill, and Hestia was conflicted on whether she should let him know or not. However, she remembered how he passionately told her he wanted to get stronger and decided to push him forward. She told him he had a talent and was experiencing an amazing growth spurt, while also offering her support as long as he didn't leave her. Afterwards, she said she would be gone for a few days. Later on, Belle heads to the pub to pay for the dinner he had before the emotional damage, and his new friend Sarata offers him lunch while blushing and giggling like she'd been infected with his Rizz. Meanwhile, Hestia attends the gods' banquet, where all the gods of Arario come together to discuss matters about their Familia. Here she was approached by Freya, the goddess of beauty, who wasn't just a goddess but a baddie you'd take one glance at and lose all morals and self-control. Soon, Loki, the goddess of the Loki Familia, approached the duo, and it was clear Hestia didn't see eye to eye with the flat-chested lowly. However, she swallowed her pride and asked her if her Familia's head sword princess, Ias, was seeing anybody, and Loki Loki basically said to mind her business. They get into a mild brawl where Loki disses Hestia on being unable to buy a dress, and Hestia claps back and insults her flat chest, which honestly looked like a chalkboard. Eventually, Hestia won the fight because she on the other hand was blessed with gigantic melons. Soon the crowd joined in the drama too and spoke in Hestia's favor, and soon enough Loki walked away in tears after losing due to not having the right equipment. Right then, another goddess, Hephaestus, showed up and questioned Hestia for being at it with Loki again. Hestia was excited to see her as they were good friends, and she came to the event to see her in the first place. Hephaestus, however, warned her that she better not be there to borrow any money from her like she usually does, but Hestia proceeded to beg her to make a weapon for Belle. Meanwhile, Belle was at the weapon store, staring at the prices that he was definitely poor to afford. All he could do was daydream and imagine till a god. Miak spoke to grab his attention. Belle greeted and apologized, saying he knew he wouldn't buy anything, and asked why he didn't go to the banquet of the gods. So he explained that he was invited, but he stayed to prepare goods instead, since his Familia was so small, after which he gave Belle some free healing potions. Back at the gods' banquet, Hestia was still on her knees for pretty much the entire day now. She was still trying to convince Hephaestus to make Belle the weapon, even though she already said her made-to-order equipment was too expensive to be given for free. Hephaestus asked why she was going that far, and she said she wanted to be supportive of Belle and not just be a useless goddess. Hephaestus was moved by her boring monologue, and she agrees to make her the weapon on the condition that she still pays for it even if it takes forever. She proceeds to make the weapon herself, with Hestia rendering a helping hand. While Belle was walking on the streets wondering when his beloved goddess would return home, some cat girl called his attention. She was a fellow waitress at the tavern where Seer worked, and she was trying to get Belle to return a wallet to Seer because she apparently forgot it while leaving for an event called Monster Philia. It was a huge festival held once a year by the Ganesha Familia, where they tame monsters from the dungeon in front of the whole crowd. Meanwhile, at Hephaestus's workshop, the weapon was completed, and Hestia couldn't be more excited. She hands it to her and she leaves to find Belle to surprise him. At the Monster Philia, a purple-eyed mystery person was seen with the Loki Familia, apparently asking for help to find a child, when she suddenly got up and left the meeting saying she had to be somewhere. Belle got to the event and saw the large crowd. He became bothered about how he would find Sire. Soon enough, Hestia shows up out of nowhere, and Belle is surprised to see her. She says it's because she missed him, and suggests they should go on a date, but he tells her he's supposed to find someone, and suggests they find the person together. Meanwhile, the mysterious person was seen again in the dungeon where the monsters for the event were caged. She selected the silverback, saying it was perfect, and set it free. When the monster broke out, it began chasing after Hestia. Instantly, the date crashes and everything begins to feel like an Isekai tutorial gone wrong. Belle ran with her as they were chased, but the monster soon caught up with them. It came face to face with Hestia, but Belle ran in feeling like a hero, but got yeeted like an intern on his first day. He managed to distract it and they ran again, but Belle separated from her and locked the gate between them, saying he didn't want to lose any more family, and he was going to buy some time. While there, Belle recalled the day he learned that his grandfather was sent to the gulag by a monster in the mountains, and this reminded him of his motivation to become an adventurer. However, all of the familias he approached rejected him since he was more useless than Sakura. After numerous rejections, he began to lose hope, but just then, Hestia approached him and offered him to join her familia, which brought the spark to him. Following this, Belle locked Hestia in a tunnel, telling her to escape since he doesn't want to lose any more family, and went ahead to fight the gray-haired King Kong while she called out to him. At the Monster Feria Coliseum, Ganesha was briefed on the monsters that have escaped by two of his subordinates, who inform him that 9 monsters were released by an intruder, and not wanting to solve this problem with his familia alone, he ordered his subordinates to get in contact with the other gods to help out. This order concerns the subordinates as they'd lose street cred, but Ganesha doesn't care about aura farming, insisting on doing so since the safety of the people was in danger. This made his subordinates understand his request, and Ganesha further ordered to have the competition continue to keep the fuss to a minimum. After this, the subordinates left to carry out his orders, and Ganesha tried to figure out the motive of this incident. Meanwhile, Belle continued to fight the silverback, and just then, his dagger broke. At the same moment, Hestia was on her way to meet him with the knife forged by Hephaestus, and recalled the tip about imbuing hieroglyphics onto weapons which she got from Hephaestus. Elsewhere, Misha informed Ina about the escaped monsters, and she quickly told her to pipe down so she doesn't cause panic. As it so happens, Ace and Loki overheard the conversation between the two and immediately took off to hunt down the monsters. Meanwhile, Belle continued to struggle against Silverback and eventually got cornered by it. Face to face with the monster, Belle figured that Ace won't make an appearance to save him again, but thought it's better that way since she won't see him in such a sorry state. On the other hand, Ace was busy slaying a monster, and after this, she asked Aina the number of monsters left, which she said is about 3 to 4. Thus, Ace took off to hunt them. With Ace gone, Misha complimented her, and Aina agreed with her, noting that Belle's admiration for her is well-founded while she worried about Belle in this situation too. As Belle was about to be lobbied by Silverback, Hestia suddenly showed up, and this attracted its attention. It then tried to attack Hestia, but Belle saved her in time and they both fell down a flight of stairs. Although thankful that Hestia was alright, Belle scolds her, asking why she didn't run away as he told her. Hestia claimed that she also has the desire to protect him and recounted the promise he made to her, stating that she believes he was strong. She then tried to give Belle the knife she forged for him, but they were confronted by the Silverback again, and to escape, Belle became Prime Minato, carrying Hestia out of the alleyway to a safe spot. He then figured that the monster was targeting Hestia, and she suggested they fight it. However, Belle thought it was a bad idea since he felt weak and his weapon was out of commission. On the contrary, Hestia still believed in him, and then presented him with his new weapon. Meanwhile, Ise finished off another monster and was then informed by two of her subordinates of a Silverback pursuing a young adventurer. Wasting no time, she immediately rushed toward the sounds created by the Silverback. Following this, the monster tracked the scent of Hestia as she enchanted the knife with her blood, while having another flashback where Hephaestus revealed the quality of the knife. Hestia then performed a status update on Belle, while Silverback located the hidden alleyway, and she was surprised by Belle's skill growth, which she believed would be enough to defeat Silverback. Nervously wielding his knife, Belle was consoled by Hestia, giving him the confidence to face the monster, and he charged at Silverback head-on, unintentionally destroying one of his chains. Astonished by this, Hestia chimed in, claiming that his weapon is alive and will grow with him. Belle then continued his retaliation against the Silverback, looking like Levi against the Beast Titan, and finished it off by stabbing it in the chest. With the Silverback defeated, the citizens who lived in the area began to praise Belle for his accomplishment, and Hestia immediately embraced him as she was happy that he survived. Hidden in the crowd, Ise was amazed by what she had witnessed while Loki soon joined her, trying to feel her jellos but failed as Ise walked off. On the other hand, as Hestia felt relieved that it's all over, she suddenly fainted, and this made Belle crash out. Later that night, Belle sat outside the room where Hestia was resting, and he was approached by Sire, who told him that Mia is allowing them to stay there for as long as necessary. Also, she said she felt responsible for getting Belle roped into the situation since she forgot her purse, and added that she might have let him hit since he looked very cool while fighting Silverback, which made him nervous. Just then, Hestia called out to Belle and he entered her room to check up on her. Belle then brought her up to date with the current events, and then asked her about the name inscribed on his knife's scabbard. Following this, Hestia revealed that she was aware of him constantly staring at the knives for sale at Hephaestus' store and had one custom made for him. Although concerned about the price that the knife must have cost, Hestia reassured Belle that she had taken care of it. Emotionally, Belle then embraced Hestia and she asked him to rely on her. Motivated by his sudden growth spurt, Belle tells Ina he was ready to go to the 5th floor of the dungeon. Ina is thrown aback by this request, and utterly refused until she saw how high his stats had become. After she checked them, she agreed she could even give him access to the 7th floor, but he needed some new equipment. The next morning, Ina meets Belle and teases him about being early and him being excited to go shopping with her. Belle blushed at the sight of her and said she looked younger than usual. This led to him being squashed against the pillows on her chest. He kept screaming to stop, but it must have felt like being in the clouds to him. They set out down the street with Ina leading the way to the Hephaestus Familia's shop. Seeing their location, Belle was shocked as he explained he was too broke to even be present in the store, let alone buy equipment from them. On entering the store, the sight of one of the prices almost gave Belle a heart attack. Just then, they run into Hestia, which shocks him, so he asks if she worked there part-time. The question flew right overhead as she saw another female too close to her. Belle immediately became defensive and asked who she was. After the introduction, Hestia went ahead to give a subtle warning to her, but Ina said she doesn't mix her private life with work, before Hestia strangles her from being within a 5-foot distance from Belle. Next, they headed to the upper floor of the shop where things weren't so shiny and expensive. Belle, now excited, wasted no time and ran to the back to check what might interest him, and soon enough he found one. A lightweight armor that had the smith's signature, Welf Crosso, on it, and he made sure to buy it. She then offered to look for a supporter for him so he could grow his party. Once they come out of the shop, she gives him a knife holder, saying she wanted to help, but the awkward situation left them so red that their face could have been mistaken for a stop sign. Walking into a seemingly secluded street, a girl bumps into Belle and falls to the ground. Belle tries to help, but just then a man with a sword shows up as he had been chasing the girl. Belle blocks his sword from touching the girl, so the strange man questioned him for protecting her, asking if they were together. Belle answered that he had never seen her before and only did so because she was a girl. Before he could continue the argument with Belle, Ryu, another waitress from the tavern, showed up and warned the man about fighting on the streets with a sword. He was about to protest when she told him to leave before it got violent, as he would not survive it. Like he was under a spell, the spineless man walked away without another word. Belle thanks Ryu, but they could not find the mysterious girl they just saved as she had hidden away. The next morning, Belle is dressed in his new gear and armor, certainly prepared to trash some monsters. As he was on his way, he was approached by a familiar red-haired girl who asked if he needed a supporter. After they had a proper but kind of weird conversation, Belle agreed to take her in as a supporter for one day. In the dungeon, Belle could easily take out monsters, and he soon realized how much relief having a supporter brought since he could focus more on combat alone. The supporter, Lilaruka, who was a member of the Soma Familia, asked about the origin of his knife, which he told her, and there was a devious look on her face. Later that day, Belle tells Ina about his encounter with Lily, and she is a bit skeptical about the Soma Familia. She said they focused on selling alcohol and were desperate people. Just then, Ina points out that his knife was missing, and Belle freaks out that he must have dropped it somewhere. Meanwhile, Lilaruka was at the pawn shop trying to sell Belle's knife when they told her it was a piece of junk like you, because it couldn't cut anything. She storms out confused since she was present when Belle used it to tear up monsters with ease. Just then, Ryu and Seer appeared on the same pathway, walking towards Lilaruka, and she stiffened, aiming to walk past them without trouble. Unfortunately for Lily, Ryu noticed something and asked her to stop and show the knife hidden in her sleeves because she recognized it. Lily denied saying it was hers, but Ryu gets the knife from her regardless. As Lily was about to flee, she bumped into Belle, who was searching for his knife in the streets. As soon as he sees all three of them, he asks about his knife and Ryu hands it to him. Belle became overly excited and held her hand fondly in thanks. This gesture must have meant something else to Ryu, as she mentioned he should do it with Seer instead, rejecting him straightforwardly. Belle collects the knife and says he won't drop it again. He asks them where they found it, and Ryu said a prum had it because she looked different. When they were out of sight, Belle told Lily he's been looking for her, and asked her to go to the dungeon with him the next day. In the dungeon, Lily thanked Belle for hiring her and noticed his knife was no longer in his waist as he had now attached it to his arm for safety. After the day's work, they discover they made more money than they had ever made. Lily stylishly suggested they split the pay, and Belle did so without hesitation. She was shocked that he split it evenly, as most of the other adventurers would try to have it all to themselves, but he says it was all thanks to her, and suggests they keep working together. Back at the guild, some adventurer from the Soma Familia was having a fit about money, and it made Aina worry if Belle was going to be okay with Lily. Meanwhile, on the street, some mysterious lady stalks Belle and Lily from afar, saying she wanted to test the power he had within him. Hestia was devastated and distraught, wailing that her Belle was cheating on her. She was out with her friend Miak for drinks, and he was the victim of Hestia's jealousy outbursts. She was drunk, in love, and with drinks, and yelled "I love you," like Belle would understand those words if he were within earshot. When she got home, Belle could see that she wasn't acting alright, and when he asked what the matter was, she called him a cheater. As expected, it flew over his head, but he managed to save himself by asking her out on a date. This lifts Hestia's mood, and she told him they were going right away, gave him a meetup location, and left for the bathhouse to prep for the date like Belle asked her out to a royal ball. At the bathhouse, Hestia was in the pool with her huge melons floating and dancing in rhythm to the water bubbling in front of her. She was approached by some other god who teased her about how huge her melons were and asked why she came to the bathhouse. They talked about the date, and Hestia tells them she was in love with a human. Later on, Belle is seen waiting for his bride, and as soon as Hestia shows up, she appears different. She really went all out for the date, as she planned to, but they were soon interrupted by the other goddesses who were intrigued by the human boy Hestia was in love with. They had followed behind her, and Belle even got face deep into the huge chest balloons of one of them. Hestia, furious, drags him away from the crowd who appeared so desperate for some clapping. They ran, got chased, and it soon became a hide-and-seek game. They finally escaped when it got dark, and they were alone on the rooftop. They enjoyed the view and watched together in the romantic setting, while they looked forward to another more enjoyable date. Meanwhile, in the streets, Lilaruka was seen being rough-handled by some tough guys who took some money from her. They treated her badly and instructed her to continue bringing the money if she wanted to remain in the Soma Familia. Her plan was to get the knife and sell it again, but the thought of Belle's kindness dropped in her mind. Another day while in the dungeon, Lily saves Belle using a magic weapon she owned. While they sat to rest, he offered her some of his food, and she asked for a day off. Belle, being a soft boss with a marshmallow heart, easily agrees, informing her she could ask for a break anytime. The next day, Belle heads to the tavern for his day off and asks Seer what she does with her free time, to which she answers that she reads books. Belle told her he wasn't much of a reader, since all the books his goddess had were too difficult to read, so she offered him an easier one that was left there by a customer on the condition that he returns it when he is finished. As soon as he gets home, he opens the book and falls into some kind of eye-opening and epiphanic dream. Hestia walks in to find him asleep and teases him for being a lazy reader. She checks his stats and discovers he has developed a magic ability called the Firebolt. She told him his magic probably didn't need a chant to get activated, but he could give it a try on his next escapade in the dungeon. However, Belle, being impatient, runs out of the house to the dungeon to try it at that moment. He got to the dungeon and tried it the first time on a monster, and it worked in one shot and blew it into pieces. However, Belle passes out from using it excessively, but luckily, Ace and her party saw him, so she decided to help out. She woke him up, and at first he thought he was hallucinating, but immediately he made eye contact. His fight-or-flight reflex went full flight and he rolled away with speed, while she wondered why he always ran away. Back home, Belle was regretting that he had run and was feeling ashamed of himself as he should, when Hestia woke up and asked if he had a bad dream. She wondered if it was because of the book he had read the day before and flipped through it. It was then she realized it was a Gilmore, a true legit magic book. When she tells him that Gilmores lose their power once someone reads it, Belle jolted up and wanted to go return and pay back, but she told him it was a top-grade piece of equipment he could not afford, therefore he could not pay back. The reality of this made Belle freeze, and Hestia tells him to just tell everyone he didn't read the book while she takes care of the rest, but he stops her. At the tavern, Belle apologized for the harm he had caused while Mamma Mia flipped through the book and told him nothing could be done, and it was the fault of whoever left the book there. He hesitated at first but then ran off to the dungeon. Meanwhile, Riveria, a high elf from the Loki Familia and her goddess Loki, are in a store to replenish stocks when Aina runs into them, and she buys Loki wine in exchange for information about the Soma Familia. The goddess proceeds to tell her that the Soma people don't worship their god, but instead worship wine. The next day, before Lily and Belle could meet, the bad guys got to her on the road, and the strange one with the sword from the other day walked to Belle and attempted to get him to join them in extorting Lily. However, he pushes him away and said he would never be involved in that. Lily showed up okay, and she asked what they were talking about, to which he answered nothing. And while they were on their way, Lily considered saying goodbye to Belle. Laurel recalls her struggles and how alone she was as a kid after her parents died. They had gone into the dungeon to make money and died immediately, marking the beginning of a tough life for her. To survive, she had to work for bad men who treated her poorly regardless of her age. She'd get beaten, exploited, and when she found a good home, they'd destroy it and take it from her. She soon developed a hatred for adventurers due to how she had suffered in their hands. In the meantime, Aina, still with the Loki Familia seeking more information, asked if the Soma Familia really worshipped the wine and not their god. Loki, the energetic drunkard goddess, told her they did worship the perfected version of the wine, which was very sacred and dangerous. The children of Soma Familia were only there to drink it as it united them, and that's all they were. Those of them who brought in lots of money got to have a little of the perfect stuff, but they became addicted to it, hence the insane desperation for money. They do anything for some cash and could mug a minotaur if it jingled or smelled like Valis. Swaying her flat rice cakes, Loki walked out after dropping all the information with a moody A's to update her status, and threatened to touch her soft skin sounding cultured regardless of her chalkboard chest. Back at his house, Belle was having a conversation with Hestia, suggesting that Lily the supporter stayed with them for some time. This must have triggered her defense mode as she tells him Lily appeared shady to her. Then she talked about the knife incident, and told him Lily was definitely hiding something from him. The next day, Lily suggests that Belle should go to the 10th floor of the dungeon. He was skeptical about it given that he only survived the 7th floor with the help of her magic weapon. She insisted, motivating him that he was definitely strong enough to handle all the dangerous monsters on that floor. Plus, he had magical abilities that could take them down easily. This felt like he was walking right into a death trap, but he agreed anyway. When they got there, Lily convinced him to use another weapon called a base laird, saying that his own weapon could not take large monsters. Her plan seemed like an obvious trap, and Belle still fell for it willingly, like it had a huge sign with free food written on it. Outside the dungeon, Aina ran into Ise and thanked her for saving Belle from the Minotaur attack. Ise asked her if Belle was scared of her, but she told her he wasn't, but rather thankful to her as well. Just then they overhear some huge men walk into the dungeon and talk about a setup for Belle. Aina put 2 and 2 together and figured out what was going on. She then asked Ise for a favor. Back in the 10th floor, Belle and Lily encounter their first monster, an orc, and she tells him he must not run. Feeling confident, he pulled out the base laird and was ready for action while the orc pulled out a tree and it became a weapon. This takes Belle by surprise, but he still runs towards a well-prepared death. In the meantime, Aina had a meeting with Hestia at the store and told her she had a feeling Belle's supporter Lily was bad news. Back at the dungeon, Belle slays the orc, but another one approaches, and he uses 2 blows of his fire bolt to take it down. Suddenly, Lily disappears while he sighted some monster lures drop on the ground. 2 more orcs show up and it becomes a tough fight for him as he starts to struggle while also worrying about Lily's whereabouts. Just then, his knife pack tore from his leg and was pulled up. Belle followed the movement to see Lily catch his knife, and she told him this was the end with a devilish smile on her face. The evil Lolly went ahead to say he should find a good place to escape as she left him in the midst of the monsters. She walked out trying to convince herself it was the right thing to do, adding that Belle was an adventurer too, one of those she hated, and she could sell the Hephaestus weapon and begin a new life anywhere far away from her Familia. Before she had the chance to imagine her new life, she found the swordsman waiting for her. They had set a trap for her on all the paths of that floor, and they had been waiting for her. He rips off her dress, takes her magic weapon, and the other guys arrive to join them. Unknowing to him, he had been double-crossed by them as well, and they threatened to feed him to monster killer ants if he tried to fight them. He immediately ran away like a chicken, and they proceeded to threaten Lily, saying they'd save her if she gave everything she had to them. She then surrendered and gave them the key to a gnome safe that held all her treasures and savings. At this moment, the killer ants had become countless, and the guys betrayed their part of the deal, telling her they'd be using her as a decoy instead because they didn't need her anymore. They toss her into the trap of monster ants and flee from the scene. Feeling helpless and worthless, Lily tells herself she deserved it for betraying Belle's trust, and she decides to give everything up and die because she couldn't take it anymore. Just then, a surge of power hit the first wave of ants that were about to devour her, and she saw Belle trying to save and protect her. He had promised Hestia that regardless of how untrustworthy she was, he would save and protect her because she was lonely like he was before his life changed. He was able to escape the orcs because another adventurer showed up and they disappeared. There was a fog, so he couldn't see who it was. Lily then became mad and roasted him for being such an idiot, and confessed the countless times she had cheated him with the money they made, the times she would lie about the price of things and how she would say mean things about him behind his back. She told him she was a liar and a thief and the worst kind of prum. She called herself a supporter, but she was really just an emotional pickpocket. She then asked if he'd save her anyway, and he gave an easy yes, saying because she's a girl. She hurled more insults at him, and he told her he wanted to save her because she was her and he didn't need a reason to save her. Hearing this made her break down in tears as she apologized to him. The next day, Belle apologized to Aina for losing his knife protector, and gave Lily her job back even though she betrayed him about 5 times in a row. While she was in the dungeon, Ais appeared unhappy because she wasn't able to apologize to Belle after saving him again for the second time. Then she saw the knife protector. Lily looks different with her torn outfit and a shorter cloak wrapped around her. Regardless of the situation, she looked hot and she flushed when Belle teased her animal ears. She used a transformation spell to remain hidden from the bad guys, so they would think she died in the dungeon. Getting to the house, she introduces herself to Hestia, and Belle leaves the two alone to get some tea. Hestia gets territorial with her man, saying that he could share a cup with her, but Belle brushes it off as a joke, shunning Hestia. Finally alone, Hestia made Lily swear to never make the mistake again, and she did. Knowing how kind Belle has been, she called her selfish for what she had done, and said she would judge her in Belle's place. Lily became devastated and awaited the hurtful words from her, but Hestia asked her to watch over her Belle instead. She asks Lily to prove her guilt with her actions, so she'd be more trustworthy. In that moment, Belle walks in, and Hestia traps his arm between her melons, claiming him in front of Lily, and she in turn flings off her coat and does the same with his other arm, also claiming him. After escaping from the ladies, Belle walks into the guild to meet Aina, and sees Aya's with her. He froze at the eye contact they had and tried to run off again, but bumped into the masculine biceps of an unclothed man. On his second attempt to flee, the sword princess jumped in his direction to stop him, and he bumped into her rice cakes. Acting like he hated it, he screamed, wondering why she was there until she gave him the knife protector he dropped and revealed she saved him from the orcs. She also apologized for letting the Minotaur escape in the first place before it came to attack him. Belle, on the other hand, apologizes for always running off instead of thanking her for saving his life, which made her smile. On their way out, he lets out his worries of being a weakling, and she offers to teach him how to fight properly, making him dumbfounded like he had just won a lottery. That evening, they meet on the bridge dressed up in their armor, and she tells him to drop the formalities, which made him happy like a kid with unlimited ice cream. Ais collected his weapon to figure out what they could train on, but she just makes some funny postures which makes Belle think she's an airhead. Like a flash, she launched a surprise attack on Belle and he fell, realizing the training had begun. It continues with Ais giving him important tricks and instructions to use when in battle while they practiced it. The following day, Belle and Lily are set for their next escapade on the 10th floor of the dungeon, and they plan to go as deep as they can because they have a day off the next day. Lily asked why he always came to the dungeon battered and bruised because she had no idea her savior was getting beatings from a girl. Right then, a batch of small monsters showed up and they fought as a team with Lily trashing them with a bow, and Belle using his weapon and the skills he learnt from training with Eyes. The orc monsters also show up, and Belle, motivated by his simping for Eyes, charges at them instead of backing out. Meanwhile, a mysterious man and a minotaur battle in another part of the dungeon, with the man leaving the creature riled up but not completing the job. During the next training, Belle gets knocked out a lot, and Eyes suggested they practice afternoon naps since adventurers needed to be able to rest in the dungeon. She proceeded to lie down, and within seconds she was asleep, leaving Belle stunned. However, he soon became distracted by his cultured grandfather's voice, who instructed him to kiss her, but he was stopped by the furious voice of Hestia, who scolded him in disagreement. Tempted, he proceeds to kiss her, but he comes back to his senses when she speaks. Soon she decides to go with him to the market to get some food, as he seemed hungry, and the first stall they approached had them face to face with Hestia. She wasn't pleased to see him with yet another woman, especially not the one he had a huge crush on, but she reluctantly gives in, warning Eyes to back off from her man, and claiming him by squeezing his face with her melons. Belle was walking on the street when Seer ran to him and held him, leading him to a heap of dishes to wash. He wasn't happy with it, but he gave in because he needed the distraction while Ryu joined him to help out. She soon reveals that she was an adventurer in the past and gives him advice on leveling up by defeating a powerful opponent and being adventurous. On their final day of training, Belle was finally able to pull a counterattack on Rizz, and they said their goodbyes believing he was ready. On getting home, Hestia noticed something odd about his status, but he left the place in a rush before she could show him. The Loki Familia expedition finally arrived, and the goal was to get to the 59th floor, which had not been reached before, and they split into two teams with the blacksmiths from the Hapacesta Familia accompanying them. In the dungeon, Belle gets a weird feeling that he and Lily were being watched, and everything seemed odd, like the day he encountered the Minotaur. As he suspected, a Minotaur approached them with a weapon, and Lily gets scared, yelling at him to run, but Belle seemed to have frozen from PTSD. He didn't come to his senses till the bull was about to hit them, so Lily moved him out of the way. However, she was hit and became unconscious while Belle charged at the bull, attacking with his firebolt. But the surge of power barely affects the monster, who in turn strikes him. At the expedition, the news of the Minotaur had reached the Loki Familia, and they were made aware of the attack on Belle. Aya, during this, runs off immediately to play savior, and some other party members follow to help. Belle, on the other hand, was getting badly whooped by the bull, and he decided to find a way to escape before the bull turned him into a disposable NPC. Just then, Lily becomes conscious with her head bleeding, and Belle yells at her to flee to safety, while he continues the fight, stalling till she's out of sight. Soon enough, the monster grabbed a hold of him and smashed him across the ground, causing him to lose a few ribs. As the bull approached him for the final blow, they were joined by Rizz, who arrived just in time to save her damsel in distress. On the contrary, Belle wasn't having it, as the thought of her saving him again made him feel weak and useless, so he forced himself to stand, telling her he could handle it alone. Now ready to errata farm, Belle draws near the bull and charges at it with a powerful strike. At the same time, Bote, the dude who mocked him in the pub, recognized and taunted him again. Lily, who had led the group to him, erratically begs for their help, so Reveria calms her down with magic. Bote decides to go help to boost his ego, but they soon realize that Belle was suddenly very skilled and having an upper hand in the fight. They were surprised by this and wondered how it was possible within a short time, while the fight progressed with Belle gaining more points than the lump of beef. Soon, his weapon smashed into pieces due to the Minotaur's thick skin, but that doesn't stop him as he maneuvers the monster's weapon and attacks with it. The bull starts slowing down as it becomes weak, and Belle uses the chance to attack using both its weapon and his firebolt magic. He held on to it, not giving up, and to everyone's amazement, after the third firebolt, the Minotaur blew up into pieces. Exhausted, Belle passed out on his feet and Lily ran towards him, while the rest followed to check his status, and it showed that all his abilities were ranked S, which was the highest stat for his level. Belle had upgraded from level 1 to level 2 within a month and a half, and he felt pleased that he defeated the Minotaur. Hestia checked his status and discovered he had gotten a new skill, Argonaut, which was the desire to be a hero, and this excites him. After her usual flirts, she sets out to a god's meeting called Donatus, where they pick titles for leveled-up adventurers, and Belle looks forward to getting one. Arriving at Donatus, a god, Takemikazuchi approached Hestia and spoke about Belle's sudden upgrade, explaining that it was a popular topic among the gods. They also chat about a kid from his Familia, Yamato, who recently leveled up, and this activates their parent mode, preparing them to earn good titles for their children. Meanwhile, Belle at home daydreams about the armor and cool title he would get. He had a few options in mind, like Fire Blizzard, Tornado Typhoon, Burning Fighting Fighter, but Hestia disappointingly returns with Little Rookie, which sounded like a beginner and emotional support pet title to him. At the pub that evening, he talked about the title with Lily, while the ladies Ryu and Seer congratulated him on his upgrade. He soon noticed the crowd at the pub were staring and talking about him, and the girls assured him it was normal for adventurers that got famous. While they made merry, Ryu advised him to avoid going deeper than the 13th floor because those floors were very different from the rest. She added that it wasn't about his abilities, but he wouldn't be able to handle it alone, and suggested that he grew his party. As soon as Belle expressed his worries, some cultured dude who had been watching them intently offered to let Belle join his group in exchange for the girls, Ryu and Seer. Ryu orders him to leave them, but he refuses, and she twists his arm, initiating a fight, but Mamma Mia interrupts, scaring the men off. In search of a new armor, Belle heads to the store but could not find products of his favorite smith anymore. He walks to the counter where he sees a guy having a fit with the salesman, and he asks about the armor. Coincidentally, the red-haired dude that was arguing with him had a box full of them, and he turned out to be Welf himself. Pleased to meet each other, they head outside and agree on a direct contract where Welf would make anything he wanted, and he would join his party in return. In the dungeon, Welf was excited to be on the 11th floor for the first time, but Lily, on the other hand, wasn't so pleased. She got mad that Belle didn't talk to her about it first, and Welf took the chance to tease her, calling her Lil Shrimp and Ugly Lilo, which infuriated her. Belle tried to explain, referring to him as Krazo, and the name sounded familiar to Lily. She revealed that the Krazos were a family of fallen and cursed blacksmiths who were rendered destitute, but Belle had no idea. However, they didn't get much time to talk about it because the monsters showed up and they sprung into action. Belle's powers had grown a lot better, and it made him feel closer to Rizz, who was still 4 levels above him. Meanwhile, in another part of the dungeon, the Loki Familia were fighting battles of their own with a bunch of erratic monsters, and they wondered what got them so worked up. Belle had gotten on their nerves, and hearing this, Rizz wasted no time disappearing from their sight. At the 11th floor, Lily was picking the magic stones when Belle sighted a new type of power surge on his palm. At that moment, a bunch of adventurers ran in as they were being chased by a baby dragon, and the creature turned to attack Lily. With urgency, Belle used the Argonaut skill, which came out strong and different, and destroyed the dragon instantly. Back home, Belle asked Hestia about the Krazos Familia, but she only had information about Welf and revealed he had the ability to make magic items that were pretty strong, but he suspiciously refuses to. The next day happened to be a day off for Belle's party, and Welf used the opportunity to take Belle to his workshop to thank him for taking him in. He offered to make him a brand new equipment, and Belle requests for the usual light armor. Welf told him to stop playing nice guy, that he needed stuff as an adventurer, and Belle agreed, picking up a huge sword. Welf laughed and said he knew he wanted a magic item because he was aware of Hestia snooping around and gathering information about him. Belle apologized, and Welf told him the entire thing was a test to know if Belle would change his attitude after learning about his abilities. He then sights the Minotaur's horn on Belle's waist and offers to use it to make him an equipment, to which Belle agrees. While he got to work, he explained he hated magic items because his customers only requested them when they became aware of his abilities. Suddenly sounding like a wise grandpa, Welf said he believed a weapon wasn't just a tool to make you famous or stronger, but rather a part of its wielder. As soon as the weapon was completed, he named it Ushiwakamaru, instead of Minotan, which sounded like a kid's superhero movie. He handed the weapon to Belle, requesting that he treat him like a companion, even though they've not known each other long enough. Elsewhere, Hestia runs into Take and the members of his Familia, who were prepared to go into the middle floors like Belle was doing for the first time that morning. When they got there, Belle and the guys were on fire, wiping the monsters off with little to no struggle, and they were feeling proud of themselves when some Almirage demon bunnies appeared. Welf and Lily teased Belle about how he was similar to them with his white hair, red eyes, and skittishness. Meanwhile, at the market, there are two strange faces. Hermes and Asfi strolling and casually talking about Belle. Hermes longed to meet Belle, while Asfi warned that it could lead to trouble, but she calms down when he rubs her head, giving heavy puppy energy. Back in the dungeon, adventurers of the Take Familia were in distress, as one of them was hurt by hellhounds that were more than they could handle, so they ran to hide. When it became a chase, they would not survive. Meanwhile, Belle and the gang were also facing some difficulties and barely getting time to breathe, as the monsters in the middle floor were stronger and numerous than what they were used to. Coincidentally, the Take adventurers encounter them, and they decide to run through them to save themselves. When they did, Lily warned her party members to retreat or they'd be destroyed in seconds. It became a chase, and Belle stopped midway to attack using his firebolt, but it only affects a part of the mob. As a result, Welf gets injured, but there was no time for condolences, as they found out they had packs of monsters waiting for them on both sides of the exit. In that moment, Belle remembered Ryu's warnings about the middle floor, and the roof caved in, causing Lily and Welf to be hit by boulders. Soon, a hellhound took its stance and breathed a wild amount of fire from its mouth to roast them, causing Belle to panic as there was no way of escape. While this was happening, Hestia, who was worried about Belle, made her way to the guild, sprinting across the street. When she got there, Aina asked her about her party, which made her realize they weren't at the guild either. She immediately issues a quest to find Belle's party when Take with his two main adventurers call out to her. In the dungeon, Belle and his gang were fortunately not barbecued because the floor gave in just in time and they fell down 2 floors, surviving by pure luck. As they tried to find a way out, Lily suggested they go to the 18th floor where the monsters didn't appear much and there were safe zones. Welf expressed his worries about the floor boss, Goliath, and Lily assured them the Loki Familia would have handled it on their way down so they could hurry and make it before it respawned. Away from the dungeon, Take's party apologized to Hestia after explaining the escapades of dumping their monster on Belle's party. She asked for their help in rescuing them and put together a search party which included some Take party members, Ryu, Hermes, and his ace Asfi. When they were alone, Asfi warned Hermes about going to the dungeon, as it was against the rules for a god to go there, but he assured her he would not get caught or do anything stupid, and Hestia said she'd go too. Before they left, Hephaestus gives a message and a mystery item to Hestia, to deliver to Welf when they find them. Meanwhile in the dungeon, Belle and the rest were making their way through the floor with the help of a disgusting scent bag Lily had brought together. It was to ward off the monsters from approaching them and attacking, but then a hellhound showed up and tried to breathe fire at them. However, Welf cornered it with a spell that made it self-destruct, and they became concerned about him as he seemed very weak from using magic too many times. As soon as the scent bag effect ran out, a Minotaur approached them and Belle wasted no time attacking it and the others that came around. The search party made their way into the dungeon with Asfi and Ryu destroying the enemies on their way. They soon come across the cave where the roof had collapsed on Belle's party, and Hestia recognized Belle's knife between the rocks. They soon figured they had gone down to the 18th floor because it was far easier than climbing up, so they headed there to find them. In the meantime, Lily and Welf had become unconscious, leaving just Belle active, and he carried them both through a hole that hopefully didn't have death waiting to devour them. He held on to them as moved across the large space towards a doorway, when he noticed he was standing in front of the wall of sorrow. Suddenly it cracked open and the floor boss, Goliath, awakened and tried to get him, but Belle, not giving up, sped up and managed to escape through the doorway. He soon finds himself outside in front of someone and weakly begged them to save his friends before passing out. When he opened his eyes indoors, he realized he had been saved by Ayas. They had been around and Belle slipped and fell face flat into her milk bags while they were talking, making the situation awkward. However, he sighted Lily and Welf asleep in the same room looking like they'd been well taken care of, and Ayas told him they had been healed by Reveria. They head out to meet the leader, Aprum, who was impressed by his escapades in the 18th floor and explained they would remain there for some time. Belle walked out with Ayas to meet Tiona and Tione, the Loki twins, and they were very happy to meet Belle, calling him Argonaut. They get all over him with praises, waving their melons in his face, which made him red with embarrassment. As they continue their stroll, Belle is amazed by the light in the dungeon as it looked like they had stepped outside. This was possible with the help of crystals, and adventurers call the place the Labyrinth Utopia because of this. Back in the room, Welf and Lily become conscious again, and Belle is excited and relieved. Welf apologized for slowing him down, but Belle tells them they both helped in the journey and they were only able to survive because of that. That night, the dwarf leader introduced them to the rest of the Loki familiar as adventurers who risked their lives for each other. The twins asked how he got upgraded quickly, and Eyes eavesdropped stylishly to hear his answer. However, the question is tough for him and he gets saved by a scream. He walked towards where it came from and found Hestia, who was relieved, happy and in tears to see him in one piece. The rest of the rescue team show up and Belle, shocked, thanked everyone that came to find him, except the Take Party members. When they settled in, the Take adventurers pleaded and apologized to them, and soon Belle agreed he would have done the same if his friends' lives were in the line. Later on, they made plans to leave when the Loki Familia destroyed the floor boss while Hestia delivered Hephaestus's package and message to Welf. Unable to sleep, Belle took a stroll to a beautiful part of the dungeon forest and was soon joined by Aze. He got nervous when she said she was worried about him, and they made plans to go to the dungeon's town the next day. Right then, they were interrupted by a jealous and possessive Hestia, who said she'd never let them go on a date, that she'd go with her. Useless Hestia was pushed by Belle to the town. She said she wanted to go herself, and they stopped with the rest of the gang to admire a beautiful part of the dungeon, which Asfi called Monster's Paradise. They arrived at the town Laveria, which was founded by adventurers, and Belle ran into the men from the tavern, who tried to cause trouble but retreated when they saw the Sword Princess. Later on, the ladies decide to go to a river to bathe together, and Hermes led confused Belle up a tree to spy. Belle is confused by this at first, until he looks down to find the girls bathing, and the Virgin flushes with embarrassment. He tugged at Hermes for them to leave, but it was a bad move that sent him falling into the river where the ladies were. The girls get excited to see him there, but it was too sus for innocent Belle to handle, especially when he sees his crush Aze among them. He literally ran on water, fleeing from the scene and landing in another part of the forest where Ryu was having her bath. He stayed to peek, proving he wasn't so innocent after all, and Ryu, sensing the presence of someone, throws a blow towards the direction, and Belle jumps out apologizing. Later on, Ryu forgives Belle while picking some flowers, and tells him she understood the situation. They eventually arrived at a gravesite where the rest of her familia were buried, and she dropped flowers while narrating her story to Belle. She had been blacklisted after taking revenge on people who destroyed her party when she was found and taken in by Mamma Mia. This made Belle understand why she seemed emotionally unavailable, and she tells him he's a human worthy of her respect. When they got back to their settlement, Bete was about to beat Belle up after learning that he saw Aiz unclothed. He was being more jealous than protective, as he had not been able to see Aiz in that way, but the twins carried him off, saying Hermes was punished for it already. Belle and Aiz say their goodbyes as they were put in separate teams and parties to leave the 18th floor, while Hestia watched like she was the god of spying, fuming with jealousy and anger. At that moment, she was captured by Mojo and his gang, who instructed Belle to come alone to retrieve her in the forest. On his way there, the big guy from the Take Familia, Uka, who had been training in the forest, sees him running with urgency. Belle got to the agreed area and encountered Mojo, who declared a duel with Belle's equipment and Hestia's release, serving as winning prizes. Belle soon realized it was a trap, as Mojo became invisible and began to trash Belle like a punching bag. Meanwhile, Hermes, who had given Mojo the invisibility potion, watched enjoyably from a distance, claiming he wanted to make the nasty side of humans known to Belle. Fortunately, the Take adventurers and others charged in to attack the bad gang, and everything soon turned into a riot. Hestia gets some good luck too, as Lily finds her using her Chianthrope sense of smell and she is released. The fight between the two sides gets crazy, and Welf loses the item he got from Hephaestus, as the rope binding it to him was cut off and it fell deep into the forest from the cliff they were battling. Belle, on the other hand, had figured out a way to attack Mojo despite his invisibility. He could feel his eyes on him, which helped him sense his next attack, and he was able to counter it. Just as he was about to finish the fight, Hestia shows up in a new form of aura. She had released her divine power and seemed like a true goddess for the first time. Seeing this, their opponents, including Mojo, fled from the scene, leaving the goddess and Belle alone. She jumps on him, clutching his face with her milk bag as she apologized for what he went through. The sweet moment is however cut short, and an earthquake starts and a huge creature is seen falling from above them. The floor boss Goliath rolls in from the roof alongside some hellish monsters, and they begin to attack Mojo and his guys. However, Belle and the other parties, including Ryu, run towards them to save them. They begin battle while Asfi gathers more men to fight the beast, as their route of escape had been blocked by the collapse, so they didn't have any other choice. Meanwhile, everyone in town sets out with weapons to fight the floor monster, and they soon realize he is a hardcore alpha boss that had magic abilities like the Howl, and could not be taken down easily. The town mages began to chant incantations while the others attacked with arrows and other weapons. As the fight continues, the mages give it their all and it falls from the impact of the critical hit, losing part of its face. Shockingly, the effect only lasts a few seconds as the monster used its regenerative abilities to reform and smash the ground with its fists, causing an earthquake and fatal blows to the town people. At the same time, Belle and Ryu come up with a plan to slay the other monsters around, buying time for the mages to recharge for their next attack. Soon, Belle tries his Argonaut Firebolt on the monster, but it was countered by its own Power Blast, so it just cuts the head in half and doesn't knock it out. Belle, hit by its surge, almost gets knocked out by another huge monster, but Uka, feeling heroic, gets in the way, and they both get fatally injured and unconscious. In his subconscious mind, Belle could hear Hestia's cries, but he found it difficult to move his body. However, he recollects inspiring words from his grandfather, coupled with those of Hermes's, and this compels him to wake up. Soon, he approached the monster with a weapon, filled with purpose to save those he loved. This emotional drive caused him to activate Limit Off, which was beyond his normal capabilities. Still in the fight, Ryu began to chant an incantation while slashing the monster at high speed. She then attacks using a magic gust, Luminous Wind, but she gets grabbed by the monster while Makoto also sends in her blast. She used a War God Strike, which was a powerful gravity spell capable of pinning down the beast, but she was unable to hold it for long. Right then, Welf charges in with the magic item from Hephaestus and chants Fire Moon, which sets off a huge explosion and sends him falling. In that moment, Belle, completely overwhelmed with power, makes his move with a new ability that blows up the top half of the monster, revealing a part of his magic stone. Belle then leaps to the top of the magic stone and smashes it with a final blow, causing the monster to finally explode. Thankfully, this ends the job, and Uka becomes conscious again. They all rejoiced with Belle, and even the Croaks couldn't help but be proud of the little rookie. Hermes, on the other hand, gives some tacky and boring heroic dialogue to no one in particular, and he plans to test Belle some more. Later that evening, Belle and his friends link up at the local adventurers' pub for some after-battle drinks. They talked about how strong Welf and Belle were getting, and Belle was just happy he wasn't weak anymore. Unfortunately, members of the Apollo Familia saw them, decided that Belle was a great target for premium rage bait, and troll him like PvP griefers. Belle fell for the rage bait, and was ready to throw hands, and Welf didn't even stop him. Using the power of friendship, Welf and Belle took out most of the Apollo guys like it's Monday Night Raw. Except there was one guy left, Hyacinthos, who was a level 3 platinum-haired Apollo fanatic pretty boy that gave off virgin energy. Belle and Welf tried to take him, but he folded both of them like laundry. Hyacinthos was about to send Belle back to the respawn menu before Bede stepped in, scaring off all the Apollo Familia members with just a glare and some aura like he was from JoJo's. Back at the church, Hestia and Lily bandaged Welf and Belle and told them how it was dumb to fall for the rage bait since they got bodied. The next day, Aina gave her usual "violence isn't heroic" speech. Right before Apollo's goons slid Belle what looked like a love letter, but said it was for Hestia. When Belle gave Hestia the letter, Hestia checked and claimed it was for some posh god party with a weird theme. But after some thinking, Hestia gave in and decided to go to the party but dragged Miak and Take along as emotional support. Belle and Hestia roll into this divine banquet where all the gods were flexing their divine aura and sipping divine wine. But a few minutes after Apollo kicked things off, Freya locked eyes with Belle and immediately activated thirst mode. She started flirting with him right in the middle of the banquet, but Hestia's jealousy meter maxed out instantly, and she stepped between them, trying to cock-block Freya and tell her to back off. So Freya took the hint and decided to back off for the moment. Then they bump into Loki and Ais. Hestia and Loki start beefing like usual, throwing around classic height jokes, Familia jabs, and god-tier insults. Belle's too distracted by the fact that Ais is standing 3 feet away and his virgin tendencies kick in. He tried to say hi but ended up just glitching like a 4KB PC. Loki, getting tired of Hestia and her virgin child Belle, yanks Ais away before Belle could even embarrass himself. Feeling sad about how his virgin tendencies were getting in the way again, Belle wanders off to the balcony to clear his head. That's when Hermes, the wingman god himself, strolls in. He casually chats with Belle about how much he's grown and how far he's come. Hermes decides to give Belle some real advice about pulling chicks rather than slaying monsters, and then pulls a few strings to get him a dance with Ais. Despite being nervous at first, Belle dropped so many moves that even Michael Jackson would be jealous, until massive hater Apollo showed up to ruin the mood and decided he wasn't interested in young love. Apollo interrupted Belle's dance. Hestia ran in the middle of the whole thing to protect Belle and body block like her life depended on it. Unfortunately for her, Apollo was not having it. Apollo accused Belle of attacking his Familia for no reason. Like Belle walked into their turf and just started solo versus squads, Apollo's whole Familia for no reason, and even beat up a member so badly you'd think he was Arkham Batman. Although Belle denied it, Apollo kept pressing, causing them to argue like some retarded lawyers pleading their cases. Hestia got mad, and of course the resident Chad is confused. Moving on, Apollo decided to announce that to solve the issue, they'll have to settle it in a war game, with the stakes being Belle. This meant that Belle would become part of their Familia if they win, and it wasn't up for negotiation. Apollo set his eyes on Belle, like a cultured man brimming with energy. He couldn't let a cutie like Belle out of his sights, so he challenged Hestia to a war, and the prize was going to be Belle. but Hestia turned him down instantly and said she didn't want his slimy hands on him, as she wasn't going to let her special someone leave with Apollo. The next day, Belle acted like he wasn't the fantasy of an uncultured god, and relaxed. He suited up like usual and got ready to go farm XP and item drops with Welf and Lily in the dungeons. After taking a few steps outside, Belle and Hestia noticed the entire Apollo Familia posted outside their doorstep like trick-or-treaters on Halloween. Before Belle could slick back his white hair, they started attacking like they were on demon timing, and ended up burning down most of the church Belle and Hestia lived in. Belle couldn't let that slide and decided to use 2 of their goons to raise his aura points by beating them with just one arm and a dagger. Belle then vaulted his way and ran to the Adventurers Guild with Hestia in his arms. But the Apollo Familia were over the top, plus they had just jumped them, and even the guild couldn't help fight. Belle and Hestia unfortunately ran into Hyacinthos, the same guy that nearly sent Belle back to the respawn menu a while ago at the pub. The uncultured Apollo fanboy decided that he was going to treat Belle like a steak and grill him low and slow. Hyacinthos pushes Belle to the ground and is about to make him a few limbs lighter until Miak, Take, and Belle's friends come just in the nick of time. Miak splashed some secret sauce on Belle and healed all his injuries and bought him and his friends enough time to run away. While they were running, the gang got ambushed mid-sprint by even more goons and had to split up. Welf, feeling like he just won the lottery, was more than up to the challenge and stood up to the goons while Belle and Hestia made a run for it. While they were fighting Xanis, some glasses-wearing dude who looked like he had a lolly quirk approached Lily on a rooftop and almost legally brainwashed her into following him. Meanwhile on the streets, Welf kept fighting but was confused, and then he noticed the dude he was fighting wasn't even from the Apollo Familia, just a random adventurer with his own motives. Belle and Hestia take refuge under a bridge beside a canal. Although Belle was panting like an overworked horse with cholesterol issues, he was still optimistic about their situation. As they were hiding, Hestia makes Belle understand they have run out of options, so to salvage the situation, they had to either send Belle on a mission to fight where he would certainly bite the dust, or abandon all of Belle's shotties in Orario. But Belle can't decide between being sent back to the lobby or losing his personal all-girls fan club. Hestia then decides that it's the perfect time for confessions, and tells Belle how much she loves him, and asks if he loves her too. Of course, Belle, being the Chad he is, can't commit himself to one woman, and says he admires her instead. But Hestia doesn't like the answer and freaks out, and like a grandma surfing the dark web leads the Apollo Familia right to their location. Belle had to bail Hestia out of it and dipped with her in his arms again. But she had a plan. They were going straight to the Apollo Familia headquarters. They ran to the big mansion Apollo Familia used as their base, and demanded they let them in. Once they got in, Apollo Familia members were already posted outside to mean mugging them, but they just kept moving forward until Apollo came out. Soon Apollo came out to see the duo, while Hestia, who was trying to act calm, asked for a glove from one of the Apollo Familia members and yeeted it right at Apollo's face like she was playing baseball, yelling how she finally accepts Apollo's challenge to the War Games. As if those were the words they were waiting to hear, Apollo Familia members started crawling out like NPCs triggered by cutscene dialogue, happy about the fact they finally get to see some action. A few minutes later, Hestia and Belle walk out of the HQ and immediately run into Welf. Welf, acting like he just ran a marathon, tells the two how Lily was kidnapped in broad daylight by the Soma Familia. Belle thinks he's Superman and wants to run off to save the day, but Hestia tells him to chill and leave it all to them, while he just focuses on grinding and leaving up as much as possible. Later, Belle goes to the Loki Familia HQ to see Aze, but when he tries to get in, the guards outside stop him. Belle doesn't take no for an answer and keeps trying to force his way in like a virus on a Windows PC, until Hinde came around. She took one whiff and tossed him out like garbage, saying she didn't want his virgin scent stinking up their HQ. But as she threw him out, she whispered a few things into his ear though. Belle got up, dusted himself off, thanked them, and ran off to the back of the HQ like a man on a mission. At the back, Aze and Hindo were standing there like they were waiting the whole time for Belle, so they could link up away from any NPCs, but Belle wasn't interested in emotional side quests and only wanted to get stronger. So he looked into Aze's eyes and she instantly agreed. Hinda of course agreed too, not wanting to be left out. Later that night, everyone is posted outside a big castle, talking about how they want even if it's just a drop of heavenly nectar from Lord Sama. Xanis, a dude with glasses and a lolly quirk, walked into the room and took Lily in with him. Lily didn't like being around guys who liked Lolas, so she immediately started begging some dude they called Lord Soma to let her leave the Familia, but bro didn't care and just kept using his stick on an unfortunate pot. Just then, an adventurer from the family got some devious ideas to get some quick cash from Lily and tells her it'll cost her 10 million to leave the Familia, and Lord Soma doesn't even care. Flashback to the conversation Lily had with Xanis on the rooftop. Xanis said they were going to help the Apollo Familia permanently send Hestia and Belle to the lobby, because according to him they had legally kidnapped Lily. Lily didn't want anything to happen to her newfound benefactor. She was leeching on, so she gave herself up to Xanis and the Soma Familia. Back to present time, Xanis locks up Lily and tells her he's going to turn her into a slave for the rest of her days, and make her use use her transformation magic for his weird fantasies. Meanwhile, some of Belle's girlfriends at the pub were talking about the war games, but the thing that was on both of their minds was how they haven't seen their boyfriend, Belle or Hestia, in a while, and how Hestia was going to skip the gods' meeting. They assume the duo already booked it to the next town, but Sura doubts and knows her boyfriend isn't a clown who runs away from fights. Meanwhile, Hestia, Welf, and some of Belle's friends were planning a secret mission to bust Lily out of the wine cellar they trapped Lily in. Uka piped up and asked Hestia if she was okay going after some side character rather than helping Belle train, but she clapped back and told him that even if one of Belle's girlfriends were unaccounted for, Belle wouldn't be able to fight at his fullest. Also, she couldn't just break her promise to Belle as she already promised him that she wouldn't let guys from the Soma Familia use Lily for their weird fantasies. A while later, Apollo was about to crash out about how Hestia was going to stand him up and avoid their meeting. Taken Miak defended her like the cool friends they were and said she was sick. Loki, always looking for a way to put Hestia down, said she probably booked it with her boy toy to the next town, and avoided the whole war games entirely. Just then Hestia waited for the perfect moment to make a dramatic entrance so she could aura farm and then walk in like she owned the place. They got their meeting started and talked about how they want their war games to go. After a bit of banter, they decided it was best to gamble on Belle's life and do a raffle draw. Hermes drew, and unfortunately he picked the worst option, which was Siege. Basically, the war game just got patched into a solo raid boss fight, and Belle is the only player logged in. It would be literally impossible for Belle to defend a castle on his own unless he's god or something. So Apollo voted for Hestia to go on the offensive. At that point, Hestia was positively cooked and didn't know how to make the situation even a bit better, until Aratus suggested they give Hestia and her Familia a helper since Belle would be massively overwhelmed. Apollo was feeling a bit nervous that giving Belle a sidekick would hinder his plan of taking Belle all for himself, so he refused the request. However, everyone called him a scared chicken, so he agreed just to keep his pride, with the condition that Belle could only get one helper who must not be part of a Familia in the city. Immediately Hestia started thinking, but figured that even having one helper would be huge for them. So she decided to let Herodotus handle negotiations while she focused on rescuing Lily the supporter. Later that day, Lily was still in the cage picturing the Shawshank Redemption when Zanus came back and told her how he planned to use all her magical abilities for profit like an evil Jeff Bezos. Zanus was about to brief Lily on her next mission when an NPC guard came in to report the arrival of some intruders, which included a lolly goddess. Zanus started plotting some devious plans on how to take out the intruders, but Lily said she won't help him if he hurts the Hestia family. Bro didn't even care and threatened to turn her into a junkie and get her hooked on Lord Soma's wine if she refuses to cooperate. Once Zanus left, the guard, feeling underpaid and a bit spiteful, threw Lily the key and turned the way for her to book it out of the cell. She immediately ran out of her cell and soon found an open gap in the walls of castle. When she looked out, she saw a whole battle going on with Welf, Hestia, Makoto, and the others. Feeling a bit emotional, she tried to get them to leave so she wouldn't be a burden to them, but Hestia went full mummy mode trying to give her validation. Lily didn't listen until Hestia pulled out the Belle card and told her how Belle was out there somewhere training, and how he'd be mad if he finds out one of his friends got kidnapped by some freaking brewery. This finally convinced Lily, who then ran up to the top floor to try and get Lord Soma to stop the fighting. Soma didn't care at first, but then decided it'll be a fun idea to give the lolly a glass of divine wine, and unsurprisingly she went out like a lamp after just one sip. As he walked away, he got the shock of his life, as Lolly showed that she's not a lightweight after all, and could handle a bit of wine. Soma was so impressed that he told Zanus to shut up when he tried to speak. He decided to grant her request, and told everyone in his Familia to stop fighting. Zanus tried to go for his plan B and take out Lolly the old-fashioned way with a giant sword, but then Welf swooped in and broke Zanus's glasses with his sword. Lolly was relieved and asked Soma to grant another one of her requests, and officially transfers to the Hestia Familia. Afterwards, Soma and Hestia have a light chat about how much Lily had changed since the drunk god abandoned her. Later on, they all met outside since they just skipped through a whole boss fight, and Hestia thanked everyone for their help. The next day, Take was busy plotting how he was going to help Hestia even though he didn't meet the requirements for being a helper. As Take was plotting, Makoto chimed in and asked him if he would allow her to join the Hestia Familia. At the same time, Welf was kneeling before Hephaestia and asked her to let him join the Hestia Familia too. She was a bit hesitant and asked him a bunch of unnecessary questions like a toxic HR and a job interview. She asked him why he would want to leave, and he explained that he couldn't let anything happen to the only person that acknowledged his work. Elsewhere, Hermes was begging Ryu from the pub to volunteer to be Hestia Familia's helper, and all she could think about was that Mamma Mia would be really mad if she left. Early in the morning, the gang were already in the abandoned church they called their headquarters when Belle walked in nonchalantly, looking like he didn't just spend the previous night getting thrown around like he had ragdoll physics on. Later that day, some girls from Apollo Familia were talking about the war games, and one of them was going on about having visions that they lost. As they kept talking, she saw some guys bring in some load, which further confirmed what she saw in her vision. The next day, the war games officially started and everyone was excited to see bloodshed. Loki and Hephaestus discussed how the town was buzzing due to the war games and managed to get a close-up look at how smug Apollo was while he spoke to Hestia. He taunted Hestia and asked if she was ready to give up her boy toy. Hermes, looking fly as usual, snapped his fingers and started a nationwide broadcast of the whole event, and as soon as the clock hit high noon, they got the show started for real. At first, it looked like Hestia Familia was going to take their time cowering or playing safe. However, on a cliff a few feet away from the castle, Ryu was already preparing to launch an assault. She took a leap of faith and instantly started attacking the castle. Using a deadly combo of 2 magic swords made by Welf, the Apollo adventurers immediately start freaking out and send almost half of their entire army to deal with her. But as Ryu continued to blitz them in the one-sided battle, her magic sword soon lost its juice and crumbled to dust. While most of the Apollo army was busy with Ryu, Makoto sneaked in through a crack in the walls. Unfortunately, some puny runt spotted her and alerted the archers, who immediately trained her with arrows which she was able to destroy thanks to her incredible speed. Meanwhile, an elf adventurer found out that Ryu was also an elf and instantly crashed out because magic swords caused him childhood trauma. Ratu then told him that helping Belle mattered more to her than that, and quickly took him out. Meanwhile, at the other end, Makoto was jumping and leveling up with her cannon fodder opponents and used her gravity spell to pin down everyone in sight. Meanwhile, Hermes was analyzing the fight as it was going on, and noticed that the Apollo Familia reactions were too fast. Hermes's assistant Asfi presumed that Team Belle were probably playing into a trap. This triggered the Sherlock Holmes in him, so Hermes started breaking down everything going on, which pointed to an information leak. Like clockwork, Lewin opened the gates and let in both Belle and Welf to get in on the action, but it soon turned out that Lewin was actually Lily shapeshifting. An adventurer stood with Apollo archers and mages on a platform where they got word that Belle and Welf got into the castle. Since they didn't even have time to find the culprit, they decided to set up a trap immediately. As soon as Belle and Welf reached the platform, the mages started charging up some fire magic, but Welf redirected it back at them, resulting in a larger explosion. As everyone tried to avoid being sent back to the lobby, the girl tried to go after Belle, but Welf held her back so she wouldn't cling to his boss. At the same time, Lily was raiding the lower floors of the castle using her crossbow like she grew up in Oblak, while Makoto eventually lost her grip on the gravity magic, causing everyone she trapped to get free. Elsewhere, the girl who saw the vision from earlier started begging Hyacinthos, their Apollo fanboy captain, to leave. However, Bro didn't listen and just slapped the girl like she just took away his Pokemon cards and talked about how he was too overpowered for a virgin like Belle to do any real damage to him. Just then, Belle showed up right under them, charging up the biggest fireball that hit the sky since the 4th of July. Belle unleashed his magic and blew up the floor above him where Hyacinthos and the other Apollo adventurers were, resulting in a giant blast that impressed the other gods so much that they started simping over him and wanted him to themselves. While Hyacinthos stood on a pile of rubble and ash, thinking that maybe being an Apollo fanboy wasn't really worth it, Belle came at him with flash-like speed. Hyacinthos tried to counter, but Belle hit him with a quick 1-2 and made him realize that he fell off hard. He went on to break his cool sword, so Hyacinthos was really salty about it. Right when Belle was about to land the finishing blow and end everything, some girl grabbed him. But Belle, being a Chad who doesn't hit women, couldn't get free, and Hyacinthos took the opportunity and charged a big attack, not even caring about anyone who could get hit. Belle thought he was done for, till Lily clutched and pulled the girl away from him, allowing him to do a barrel roll and escape. Although Belle dodged the attack, it was like a toxic ex and kept coming back to Belle, till Hyacinthos blew it up right in front of Belle. Everyone thought he was finished, but he still had one more in him and stood up for the final fight. Hyacinthos charged at Belle with his other sword, and Belle suddenly got flashbacks of his training with Eisenhinda and used the moves to beat Hyacinthos with one punch. Apollo, like everyone who gambled their life savings that day, was visibly confused at what he just witnessed and started freaking out because he wasn't about to do any favors for a short goddess with max chest stats. He tried to reason with her, but Hestia was about to make Apollo freak out so bad he'd rage quit and made him give her his wealth, disband the Apollo Familia and exile himself from Orario. Later that day, the new Hestia Familia went to their new HQ, and Hestia made a new emblem for them, a drawing of the heart fire and a drawing of a bell. Days passed and Lily went back to Soma Familia HQ, not for a fight but to thank Lord Soma for everything. However, Bro nonchalantly stirred his ingredients and told her to take care of herself. Hestia was waiting for her outside like a single mom picking up her daughter from school, and they both went to the new Hestia Familia HQ, a giant mansion they legally stole from Apollo. Hestia decided they should toast to the victory in war games, but the others were confused since Lily, Makoto, and Welf joined the Familia and were all reasons for a toast. Hestia decided to explain that the best news they got so far was that Belle had finally reached level 3. Even the NPCs at the guild were talking about it. Not just that, since Belle was Hestia's first child and boy toy, they all agreed that he should be the captain of Hestia Familia, and as the new captain, Belle toasted to his friends joining the Familia. As they all talked about how they got rid of the weird Apollo statues that were everywhere and the Apollo members probably worshipped, there was one thing on everyone's mind and Hestia gave them the green light. Welf and Makoto had asked for a few things, and the Goibanu Familia had delivered. Makoto got a giant queen-sized bath that she got to enjoy all by herself, and Welf got a smithing workshop so he could keep making sick tools. Belle, Hestia, and Lily took a walk around the mansion, and Lily wondered if they were overspending, but Hestia told her not to worry about it. Belle quickly suggested some live-in maids to keep the place clean, but they all saw through his plan to get his own personal collection of girlfriends and turned down his idea. When Belle walked outside, he spotted Daphne and Cassandra, the two girls who almost stopped him from winning the war game, but he already forgot about that part. Daphne said Cassandra forgot her pillow in the mansion and was sure that it was there, and Belle, having nothing better to do, quickly found it, causing Cassandra to fall in love immediately. They both decided to come back the next day, and that's when Belle found out that they were recruiting new members the following day. Although the guys were a bit concerned, Hestia assured everyone that this was the perfect time to get new members, and the next day, their front lawn was packed full of all kinds of people, mostly NPCs, but Belle and Hestia were happy that their small familia was getting new members at last. Welf wasn't even sure most of these people were adventurers, but Hestia said they all came from out of town to see godly chess stats and join the familia. While Welf was busy picking out all the baddies, Lily was doing the same but for totally different reasons. Lily was going to put a leash on Belle in advance so no one was going to steal him from her. Meanwhile, Makoto wasn't even in the scene and was busy looking for a change of clothes after she soaked in the bath for a while extra. While almost exposing her massive war stoppers, Makoto found a box labeled "Do Not Touch" that was obviously written by Hestia. While Makoto was reading the letter, Hestia was talking to all the people who came to join the familia, making everyone there glaze her so they could join. Just as Hestia was about to start her new boyfriend interviews, Makoto ran in and fell flat on her face. While trying so hard not to show off her plots, she showed Hestia the paper. Immediately, Hestia freaked out and snatched it, but Makoto already revealed that they were 200 million veils in debt. This made the newbies assume that Hestia was doing the interview sessions, so she could pay off her debt with more labor force, so they began to make themselves scarce. Welf then checked the paper and saw the signature of Lady Hephaestus, and immediately Belle put 2 and 2 together and started crashing out, realizing that he's been using a 200 million veil knife to do his dungeon runs. This made him pass out only to wake up later that day in a room with Welf by his side. Still tweaking after what happened earlier, he asked Welf what happened, but Welf decided it was the perfect time for some relaxation instead. Meanwhile, Hestia was chilling in the queen-size bath, thinking about how big of a screw-up she was, but then started hearing Belle and Welf's voice. Rather than focus on her bath, she went over to the wall to eavesdrop. Belle and Welf were standing around plotless in the men's bath, and Welf suspiciously complimented Belle's body. Belle, being a nice dude, accepted the compliment like it was anything but sus. Hestia kept eavesdropping and even told Makoto and Lily to shut it so she could focus properly. At the bathroom, Welf explained to Belle how everyone was worried when he pulled a disappearing act, so he shouldn't overthink anymore. The guys talked about everything that lead up to that day, and the girls in the other room were also enjoying the gossip. Belle also told Welf how thankful he is to he and everyone else who joined the familia. He soon started blabbing and feeling emotional, as started telling Welf how he felt about everything, and how it seemed like he'd been using them. But Welf assured him that wasn't the case. Hestia was a little bit too emotional, and climbed the divider trying to reach Belle, almost exposing her divine features. Later on, Hestia admitted that she might have gone a bit overboard, and now they were saddled with generational debt, so she begged everyone to help her, and they all agreed. As everyone was having snacks and drinks, someone knocked on the door. Mikoto ran to answer it and saw her former teammate Chigusa. She tried to invite her inside for dinner, but Chigusa was having none of that, so she whispered some bad news to Mikoto about an incident involving a fox girl. One evening, some lady dressed in some plot armor sends many working girls eager to bring back men so they could have a sweaty workout together. Meanwhile, Mikoto lied that she was going to bed when she was obviously waiting to sneak out. Once the coast was clear, Mikoto jumped out the window and ran off, but Belle, Welf, and Lily saw her and decided to tail her. They ran after her so fast Belle almost puked and saw her meeting up with Chigusa, her old teammate. They followed both of them for a bit till they arrived at the Red Light District, a place where young adventurers became men and could have a sweaty workout to further the plot. They decided to keep following Mikoto and Chigusa, but Lily never wanted Belle to come to a place like that so they wouldn't steal him from her. Welf slicked his hair back and followed, but his reaction made it clear he was a freaking virgin. Lily tried to stop a lady hitting on Belle while Makoto and Chigusa were cornered by some guys who looked like they sold workout memberships, so they had to abandon Belle in the clutches of another woman and save the two. Welf and Lily managed to save Makoto and Chigusa and demanded to know why they were there. Chigusa admitted it was her fault for dragging Makoto along with her. Apparently a childhood friend of theirs had been working as a workout instructor, so they had to come see for themselves. Lily started acting like a responsible adult and told them they shouldn't have come alone, and that was when Welf noticed that Belle had vanished. Meanwhile, Belle was somewhere in the Red Light District, overwhelmed by the amount of plot he was seeing, so he tried to escape but still ended up lost. He started walking around, but his Rizz was so overwhelming that all the ladies were eye-stripping him. He continued walking until he ran into the god Hermes. Hermes teased Belle about him being in the Red Light District, but when Belle tried to explain the situation properly, Hermes hit him with the shore buddy and asked him not to tell anyone he saw him last there. As a little thank you gift, Hermes gave Belle a little workout body enhancer, which made Belle almost choke. As he ran away, he almost phased through a woman's plot, but he stopped midway. The woman introduced herself as Isia and asked Belle to buy her workout services for the night. She then proceeded to put Belle in a body lock and forced his face into her plot anyways. She kept him pinned to her body till some of her friends came over and asked if Belle was a new customer. They all kept talking about how cute Belle was, until one of them saw that Belle was the little rookie, the same one who won the recent war games. They all hold down Belle and took him into a large building where he saw a lady with super maxed out chest stats. They all refer to her as Lady Ishtar. Belle remembered a conversation with Ina a while about the Ishtar Familia being one of my most strongest in Arario, and instantly realized he was cooked. Since all the other rooms were unavailable, Belle had to wait with all the women who wanted him in a waiting room like he was waiting for surgery. He tried to smooth talk his way out of it by saying he's from a different familia, but the women weren't having it as all they wanted was his secret sauce. As they were planning, an extra ugly giant lady who looked like a cross between a hippo and a frog burst through the doors saying she smelt a fresh, untapped virgin. They called her Frine, and she had just one thing on her mind, Belle. She looked at Belle and instantly decided that he was her type and wanted him all to herself, but the other girls waiting were not about to let that happen. Fern tried to get them to leave Belle for her to do her thing, but they didn't want her to ruin Belle like she did so many other guys. While all the women were arguing about who would get dibs, Belle tried to secretly escape, but they all saw him and started chasing him like he was prey. Belle was going down easy and started running and dodging the obstacle course. He got out of the building and hid in a few bushes. A few minutes later, Belle overheard some other women talking about how a reward was posted for anyone who could catch him. Belle was getting fed up with the situation, but he kept going until he heard some women behind him, so he booked it into a random building. He thought he had lost them until he heard more footsteps, so he just slipped into a random room and closed the door. Belle chilled out and noticed the room in front of him had an on light, so he decided to go in and see what's up. Once inside, Belle saw a cute fox girl with a red kimono, which totally stunned him. The fox girl then introduced herself as Haruhime and told Belle how she was his for the whole night. Belle was still confused, but Haruhime dragged him towards the bed. He slipped and they both fell flat on the bed in a sus position, prompting Haruhime to ask if it was Belle's first time furthering the plot, to which he replied yes. She told him to relax and let him do the Lord's work, but Belle wasn't really in the mood for a workout. Still, she told him not to worry and started taking off his clothes like she knew what she was doing, until she passed out at the sight of his collarbone. A few minutes later, she woke up, apologized to him as she mistook him for a customer and embarrassed herself. Haruhime reintroduced herself, and Belle did the same. She was curious and asked Belle why he was in the red light district since he wasn't there for some workout sessions. So Belle explained to her how he got chased by a bunch of wild women, so she offered to help him hide through the night. In exchange, she asked Belle to chat with her in the meantime. Belle started by narrating how he came to Arario to become a legend and get loads of cash, while Haruhime also told her sob story about how she came from the Far East because her family kicked her out and sold her to the Ishtar family when she was little because she kept burning breakfast. But it was a win for her since she always wanted to come to Arario because of the stories she heard as a kid. So they both bonded over stories of heroes. Meanwhile, Hermes met up with Ishtar and gave her a sealed box. Hermes asked her what she was going to use it for, and she said she was going to show him something fun soon and do something bad to that queen of theirs. When Ishtar asks Hermes if he has any dirt on their mutual foe, Hermes just said he doesn't. Just then, the situation took a complete turn, and Ishtar dropped her clothes to the ground. As that was happening, Belle and Haruhime kept talking about stories. Haruhime revealed how she had always wished she had a hero to take her to the land, and of her dreams like in the stories they read. But she had woken up to reality, and claimed she had no right to be taken away from there. Belle tried to cheer her up, but she told him how even though she was a noob, she's had workout sessions with dozens of guys, and how she'd given up her body to further the plot. She explained how she was no longer pure, and no hero would want damaged goods like her. Soon it was dawn, and Haruhime showed Belle a shortcut to get out of the red light district before Asia found him. Once Belle left, Asia came out of nowhere and told Haruhime to go home. Meanwhile, Hermes was crying in bed, and apparently he had sung like a canary and told Ishtar all about Belle. Hearing how Freya liked Belle, Ishtar wanted him all to herself. Belle eventually got back to the mansion and was instantly chewed out by Hestia for staying at the red light district all night without telling her. She was even more mad that Belle went to the red light district in the first place, since she couldn't let him take an interest in other women. So she decided to sentence Belle to community cleaning as punishment. While Belle was cleaning the community, he saw a bunch of kids, and remembered how Haruhime wished she had a hero to save her, and how he couldn't even say a single word to her. A little bit later, Makoto, Wealth, and Lily joined Belle in his community service, since they were the ones who dragged him to the red light district in the first place. Makoto told Belle how she had been looking for a fox girl, and Belle, putting two and two together, asked if it was Haruhime. Makoto got a bit heated and asked how Belle knew about her, and Belle had to tell them the whole story. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do, as Lily pointed out that they literally just finished a 5 vs 100 war game, and if they tried to rescue Haruhime, it would cause even more problems. Meanwhile, Hermes was begging Mamma Mia at the pub to help him pass a message to Freya. Mamma Mia wasn't having it until Hermes mentioned that Ishtar had her eyes on Belle now. Mamma Mia was surprised and asked how it happened, but all Heratas could say was that she used some advanced interrogation techniques, and it was out of his hands. Sarada had been eavesdropping, and wanted to know if Heratas had taken Belle to the red light district in the first place, so Heratas swore on his divinity that he didn't. As that was happening, Belle took a trip to the guild and ran into Aina. Aina instantly knew that something was up and asked Belle what happened. Belle explained to Aina about everything that happened, and she chewed him out, partly because she liked him, and partly because working out at night wasn't anything heroic. After that, Belle told her he wanted to know everything about the Ishtar Familia. This made Ina give Belle the rundown of everything he had to know about the Familia, from their business to their fighters, with even the obese Captain Freya being level 5, and Eza being level 3. But unfortunately, Ina didn't have any information on Haruhime. Ina decided to tell Belle some super secret information about the Ishtar Familia. She told Belle how some factions had been complaining that the Ishtar Familia had been skill hacking and hiding their actual power from the guild. But when the guild investigated, nothing came out, and the Ishtar Familia bullied the factions that complained into submission, and even sued the guild and got tons of loot from it. So now the guild could no longer interfere in the red light district. She ended their convo by telling Belle not to get involved with the Ishtar Familia. Later that day, Belle were taking a stroll, thinking about how Lily was right about how mingling with the Haruhime wasn't worth getting targeted by the Ishtar Familia. Belle wandered into a library and read a book about a vampire who tried to get a hero to further the plot with her and ruin his name. But the hero was a Chad, and saw through her lies. But as he was reading the book, Belle couldn't help but think about Haruhime, and how she said heroes hated working out with girls, so he called out to his grandpa for guidance. Later that night, Haruhime was in the red light district, busy thinking about how she was probably never going to leave the hellhole. Ayaja saw that something was on her mind and decided to try and cheer her up with some snacks from her hometown. Once Arisha left, Makoto popped out with a hood and started calling to Haruhime. She tried reminding her how they played together as kids, but Haruhime didn't recognize her, and left not knowing Aiza was secretly eavesdropping. The next day, Makoto was talking to Belle and ranting to him about how Haruhime blew her off the previous day, and she went on to narrate her origin to Belle. Long ago, Lord Take, some others like Chigusa and herself used to be poor back when they were in the East, and Haruhime lived a cushy life with her rich noble father. One day, Haruhime couldn't finish her food and suggested that they give some of the food to the poor people that lived near them, and that's how Haruhime met Lord Take and the rest. Lord Take decided that he didn't like how Haruhime lived, and sent the kids to do his dirty work to kidnap Haruhime. That was when Lord Take gave the kids their blessings. From there, every night they would break into the estate and sneak Haruhime out like it was a scene from a prison break. One of those nights, Haruhime became close friends with the kids, and Makoto was just happy to repay back the kid that fed them. After hearing her sad origin story, Belle decided to go against everyone's advice and better judgment and told Makoto that they should give rescuing Haruhime a shot. As they were talking about his crazy plan, Belle spotted Hermes snooping on them. Hermes was a little nervous and said he was just checking on Belle. Hermes tried to book it, but Belle asked him if he knew anything about the red light district, and he got sucked into an unskippable cutscene. Later at the pub, Aratas explained to Makoto and Belle that the only way they could set Arataspi free was by saving enough money and buying her from the Ishtar family. Belle and Makoto got excited, and Makoto gave Aratas a description of Arataspi in case he had any more information. But sadly, Aratas remembered he left the stove on and dipped just before telling the two that the night he bumped into Belle, he was going to deliver something called a slay stone to Ishtar. Later that night, Ishtar summoned all her best girls and sent them all to kidnap Belle, since she didn't want Freya to get her hand on him. Ishtar told the girls she wanted to make Belle hooked on her like a 5-year-old in a candy store, and told them they could all have their turn with him after she had him all to herself. Ishtar made them understand how once the full moon came out she was going to start a slaystone ritual and use Belle as bait to start a war with Freya. She told them not to get caught, and they all started planning their next move. The next day, Makoto and Belle were leveling up in the dungeon with Wealth and Lily trailing behind while Belle was one-shotting monsters as usual. Lily told them to be careful, but Makoto just ignored her and told everyone to beat it. While they walked, they all talked about the situation with Haruhime, and even Lily said she wasn't fully convinced but was going to grind items regardless. A little further down the dungeon path, the Ishtar Familia were busy preparing to ambush Belle and his friends. Ishtar herself was off in the corner, making some hooded figure try and turn Aiza into a Super Saiyan. Belle and the others run into some monsters, and even though they're strong, the amount of monsters was too much for them, and they ended up getting separated. Belle tried to use some magic to clear out the room, but he got yanked by the collar by someone he couldn't see. Belle was dragged into a dark part of the dungeon by Aiza, causing him to be confused about the bizarre situation as well as why she looked like she took a glitter bath. Belle tried to fight the low-budget Super Saiyan, but she was too strong and it looked like he was about to die a virgin. Luckily for him, Makoto noticed that he was gone and rushed to his rescue like a knight in shining armor. Makoto gave Belle enough time to stand up and get back into the fight, but it turned out to be pointless as Aiza started putting hands on Makoto and Belle like she was a stepdad under the influence. She kicked Makoto back a few frames and started beating the white hair off Belle. Belle recovered quickly and tried to fight back, but she was just eating up all his hits like Mrs. Pac-Man. When he fell down, he saw Makoto on the ground behind Aiza as well, and before he could do anything, Freya popped out of nowhere and knocked him out cold. They dropped Belle's body with Makoto's, and Aiza told the girls to make sure they didn't damage his brain as they escaped. When Haruhime walked in, she recognized Belle as the new friend she made a while ago and felt bad that she helped kidnap him. A while later, Belle woke up chained to a wall in a dark cell. He looked around and instantly wished he washed his eyes with bleach once he saw that Freya was standing in the cell with him. Meanwhile, Isa and the rest of the girls were on the hunt for Freya. Apparently she couldn't control herself and decided she deserved the first bite of Belle, so she kidnapped him. Haruhime heard this and ran off to find Makoto. She apologized to her and disappeared mysteriously, but not before dropping the key in her cell. Meanwhile, Belle was crashing out at the sight of giant toad spit and was doing everything he could in that moment to break free and run away. Vaterian was raging with hormones, so she leaked his face to show him she meant business. Acting like she didn't just break several laws somewhere, she looked around the cell trying to get inspiration for how she's going to play with him. Belle continued to struggle, but she told him it was pointless as no one was going to find them there, so he was off relaxing. Freya then proceeds to get a jump on Belle, and seeing that he wasn't ready for any sort of workout, so she told him she was going to find a drug that would make him go crazy for her and her workout sessions. Immediately, she took a few steps outside the cell. Belle started pulling on his chains like his life depended on it, wondering if he could escape, like an angel sent from heaven. Haruhime came into Belle's cell and Belle couldn't contain himself. She helped him break free of his chains and Belle threw himself at her crying, seeing as he was almost violated by a giant frog. Makoto, on the other hand, was Assassin's Creeding her way through the building, trying to find Belle with some sort of sonar technique, but Belle was already out of range at that point, and she had to keep moving. At that point, Freya had gotten back to the cell but was so mad she didn't find Belle and instantly knew that it was Haruhime's fault. Despite the chaos, Haruhime was taking Belle through an underground passageway that would help him get out of the red light district without anyone knowing. Belle of course couldn't be at peace if any of his girlfriends were in trouble, so he asked about Makoto and Haruhime explained how she threw her the keys to the cell and that she'd probably be on her way to Timbuktu by now. This got Belle worried, so he asked if she would be alright if they found out she was behind his release. She then explained to him how Freya probably knew it was her doing, but she couldn't let him be, seeing how brutal she could be. Meanwhile, Makoto was still jumping from the ceilings in the building trying to find Belle and escape when she stumbled into a room that looked like a library and some papers on the Slaystone ritual. Back in the tunnel, Belle revealed to Haruhime how he and Makoto planned to save up enough cash and buy her from the Ishtar Familia. On hearing this, Haruhime started getting emotional and told Belle that just knowing that he and Makoto truly cared about her was enough to make her be at peace. As the night faded, there was still a manhunt for who could catch Belle first. Meanwhile, the Hestia Familia was having a meeting with Lord Take and his Familia to get them up to speed on what was going on. They had already figured out who kidnapped Belle and Makoto, but they couldn't figure out why. They started brainstorming some wild ideas until Hestia remembered that Belle mentioned something about a Slaystone. Lord Take immediately knew what it was and started freaking out. He told them how it could be used to store a Renard's soul, and just holding it gave a huge power boost to the user. He explained how even pieces of the stone were the same as the whole stone itself, so once the soul is sealed, the stone is usually broken, but unfortunately once the stone is broken, it could never be put back together and the soul is lost forever. He added that the Slaystone ritual could only be done on a full moon, and everyone immediately realized that it was going to be that night. Elsewhere, Belle and Haruhime came out of the underground tunnel and entered an empty street. Haruhime tried to get Belle to go alone, but Belle couldn't bring himself to abandon a cute girl in need. Like she was tracking them, Makoto appeared out of nowhere. Makoto confronted her and asked if she knew anything about the Slaystone, but Haruhime couldn't answer. Makoto was stunned and made her deny the fact that she was planning to sacrifice her soul, but she didn't. Meanwhile, Belle just stood there totally confused about the situation. But before he could get any answers, Asa swooped in and took Haruhime away like a 60s comic villain. Asa explained their whole plan to start a war with the Freya Familia and use Haruhime's level boost magic when she gets sacrificed to get stronger. Belle couldn't understand it at first, but got the message loud and clear when he heard that a cute fox girl was going to bite the dust, just so they could start a war. Seeing that it might be their last meeting, Asa decided it was convenient to share her sob story, and started talking about how she hated Haruhime because she never talked to anyone, and despite people trying to help, she smiled like she had just accepted her fate. Asa took out her anger by breaking a magic item sent to their HQ, but unfortunately, she was quickly caught and manhandled by a giant toad. After that, her goddess Ishtar made her further the plot, until she almost went crazy, so now she couldn't disobey her goddess's orders anymore. She looked at Belle and taunted him, asking him to either stand there like a coward or come and get his girl. However, Belle couldn't move and saw that he was screwed. Isa told him that she wasn't going to let Belle have her, and that he didn't look like a manly Chad, but a cowardly boy since he couldn't risk it all for a fox girl workout session. Eventually, the rest of the Ishtar Familia girls came over and found Isa staring down Belle. They all pounced on him like starving gluttons, and didn't realize that Makoto had already dragged him away. When Belle and Makoto finally lost the Ishtar Familia girls in a street, they tried to catch their breaths. Belle couldn't get his mind off what just happened and thought he was worse than trash for not responding to what Ise said, and how she knew he wasn't ready to risk it all to save a girl who desperately needed a hero. Belle couldn't control himself and tried to think about what he could do while Makoto watched him like he was going crazy. Later that night, the taken Hestia Familia tried to do a squad rescue mission, but the NPCs at the front gate didn't let them in. Hestia was pretty mad, and even Uka and Chigusa confirmed that every single entrance had been sealed off. Rather than being concerned for his safety, Hestia was more worried that Belle might be busy furthering the plot with one of the Ishtar girls. Inside the Ishtar HQ, Toad Lady Freya was losing her mind and trying to blame Haruhime and the girls for failing to find Belle in time, but one of the girls made her calm down as they could just kidnap him again after the ritual. Meanwhile, Belle and Makoto were still in hiding, but Belle looked like he was 5 seconds away from crashing out, so Makoto gave him some space to think. Belle kept thinking about Haruhime and how she said red light district's girls were like a stain to heroes, but Belle didn't want to believe that this was what the heroes he fell in love with were like, and that wasn't the hero he wanted to be as well. Makoto came back and suggested they go home and calm their nerves with some bubble bath, but Belle was still uneasy and decided he was going to ignore everyone's warnings again and save Haruhime, even if the Ishtar Familia comes for all of them. Makoto couldn't believe Belle would go so far, and this made her a bit emotional and thanked him. Meanwhile, Aisha was aura farming, but the other Ishtar girls were worried that Belle won't come. But Aisha already rage-baited Belle and knew he was a cultured Chad that couldn't stand seeing women in danger. At the other end, Belle and Makoto were making some last-minute plans to save Haruhime once and for all. Makoto was going to find and try to rescue Haruhime, and if she failed, Belle was going to find and destroy the Slaystone. Once Makoto left, Belle started feeling a little pressure, but then he remembered that he still had some unused plot armor and started aura farming. He ran up to the front of the Ishtar Familia HQ and charged a blast so strong it wiped out everyone there in one shot. Belle then ran into the building, and while the Ishtar girls tried to surround him, Belle just kept one-shotting them like it was target practice. In just a few minutes, smoke started coming out of the HQ, and even Hestia and the rest that weren't even allowed inside the vicinity saw it. The girls guarding the gate from Hestia and the others saw the smoke and started freaking out, but remembered they had orders not to allow anyone through. Unfortunately for them, at the same time, Uka remembered equal rights, equal fights, and threw one of the girls to the back like she was paperweight. Meanwhile, Belle kept running around the mansion one-shotting girls with his fire magic. Outside, Makoto was hiding around the building trying to find Haruhime. She snuck up behind one of the girls who had been left alone and demanded she tell her where Haruhime was at the time. After a bit of thinking, she realized that maybe not getting sent to the lobby was a smarter option, so she told Makoto that Haruhime was at the Hanging Garden but ended up getting knocked out after. Meanwhile, Frog Lady Freya walked into the Hanging Gardens to inform Aisha and the rest that Belle actually came back. Haruhime tried to leave, but they sat her foxtail back down while Freya called Aisha over so they could make it a party and jump Belle together. Elsewhere in the building, Belle had lots of women after him, but not in the way he wanted, and still decided that he hadn't rage-baited them enough. He managed to create an explosion and jump out of the smoke down to the ground floor. He thought he was in the clear until Frog Lady Freya started throwing giant axes at him, but he managed to dodge a few of the axes and tried to use his fire magic, but Freya swatted it away like it was a fly. Freya kicked Belle through a door right into the hands of all the thirsty women that wanted him to themselves. Belle already knew he was cooked and started thinking how he could make it out, but unexpectedly, Lady Ishtar herself came down and told all her girls to leave. Freya couldn't believe that she told them to leave just as things were getting good, but even giant frog women have people they couldn't stand up to. Lady Ishtar looked at Belle like a piece of rare meat and asked if he got attached to any of the women there. But Belle, acting like a typical virgin, couldn't say a word. He wasn't interested in talking about women, and when he demanded to know why Haruhime was going to get permanently banned from the server, Ishtar laughed and told him how was too overpowered, so if everyone in the Familia could also get overpowered, they would easily put Freya Familia in a headlock. She added that the only reason why she hated Freya was that Freya kept stealing all her boyfriends when she was clearly prettier than her. Belle couldn't process what her beef had to do with Haruhime being a workout instructor, but so she explained that a little light activity wasn't bad for one's health. Her blabbings just phased through Belle's brain until one of Ishtar's boy toys swooped in behind and dropped him to the ground. When Ishtar took off her clothes, Belle knew that he was about to be super cooked. Meanwhile, Freya was enjoying a glass of wine when one of her children told her about some NPC strike team being ready to attack. However, at the same time, there were a bunch of adventurers posted outside of the Ishtar Familia mansion like it was the end of the world. Inside, Belle still hadn't fallen for Ishtar, so they forcefully checked his status and found out that he was so stacked that he can't fall for some for cheap love charms. Belle tried to run away, but Ishtar got pissed and sent her goon after him. Meanwhile, Makoto showed up and sent two girls who were supposed to watch Haruhime to the afterlife. When she informed Haruhime that both her and Belle had come to save her, Haruhime didn't think she was worth it and begged Makoto to just forget about her. Makoto still tried to convince Haruhime that she's worth it and that Belle would do anything for her to escape, but Haruhime started crying about her giving up her body just for workout sessions. While they were arguing, more NPCs ran in like cockroaches and attacked Makoto, so she had to escape and fire the signal, notifying Belle that she couldn't save Haruhime. When the time for the ritual arrived, Ishtar's most loyal girls were about to sacrifice Haruhime. One of the girls attached the Slaystone to a dagger and got ready for the ritual. Right when they were about to do the deed, Makoto showed up and wasn't going down without a fight. The adventurer who wanted to start the ritual begged for permission to fight, and almost immediately moved to attack Makoto, landing punches like she was prime Mike Tyson. She knocked out Makoto and was about to finish her off when Freya found out Belle escaped and started taunting him. Mikoto, with no other choice, hugged the wannabe Mike Tyson and self-destructed, knocking out half of the girls along with herself. At that point, they were about to speed up the process to stab Haruhime, but Belle arrived just in time and shattered the Slay Stone. Late at night, Ishtar watched in shock as she saw the red light district getting destroyed. Just then, her assistant stated the obvious that they were getting attacked, but what Ishtar couldn't believe was that the people attacking her were from the Freya Familia. Freya told Otter not to worry about her and told the remaining Freya Familia members to stick to the plan and lay waste to the girls' Ranger Familia. Back at the ritual grounds, both the Slay Stone and sword disappeared like Belle's love life, which got Freya furiously mad. While Farin tried to scold Belle, some of the girls noticed that there was fire in the red light district and that it was not from fireworks. While all that was happening, Belle told Haruhime how he didn't care what anyone said and that the hero he wanted to be wouldn't let cute girls get sacrificed. Rather than jump him, Freya let Belle finish his motivational speech right before Haruhime got her into battle mode. Freya knocked out Belle pretty easily while Haruhime started chanting, getting ready to make the Frog Princess even more powerful. But instead of Farin, Haruhime charged up her energy and made Belle even more powerful than he was before. This made Freya crash out and swats Haruhime away like a fly for betraying her loving Familia. Belle, now stronger, decided it was finally time to humble the giant toad, so he launched at her. Meanwhile, the other Ishtar girls didn't understand what was happening in the red light district, so Aisha told them to prepare for the worst, as they were likely getting attacked by Freya Familia. But without the Slay Stone, they would literally get bodied by every single member of Freya Familia. When they asked what she was going to do, Aisha said she was just going to chill there and wait for a friend. Meanwhile, Ottar and some members of the Freya Familia who were trying to find Ishtar told Ottar that they're jealous of how much love Belle was getting from Freya, so they planned to ignore him. Ottar didn't really care about that, as he noticed someone in the bushes, so he dumped some secret healing sauce on them, and it turned out to be Makoto. Elsewhere, Hestia Familia and Take Familia were walking through the mostly empty halls of the Ishtar Familia mansion and randomly got jumped by an NPC adventurer. The NPC put up a good fight, but since he had no plot armor, he got bodied by a random jerky fighter from Freya Familia. This confirmed Hestia and Take's assumption that Freya had definitely started attacking the Ishtar Familia, but since it didn't really have anything to do with Belle and Makoto, their goal remained the same. Meanwhile, Belle was still battling it out with Freya, but he seemed to be losing. After another hit from Freya, Belle's brain had a reset and decided to go all out with a sword. He started going band for band with Freya and even scarred her face, and when she crashed out and broke the ground, Belle took the opportunity to take her fat frog behind down, causing her to fall through the same cracks she made. Just as he was breathing a sigh of relief, Isa showed up ready for round 2. However, the poor guy had no gas left. Somewhere down in the building, Freya managed to survive and came out from under the rubble, but she didn't like what she saw as most of the red light district was already ash at that point. Just when she thought she had enough problems, Otter came out from the shadows and Freya started genuinely tweaking. She puts 2 and 2 together and realized that they're behind the burning of the red light district, so she tried to attack Otter. Unfortunately for her, Otter was an absolute unit and stopped her with just one hand. Freya tries to beg for mercy and even used herself in a price for her life, but her mistake was saying she was prettier than Freya. Otter couldn't tolerate any Freya slander, so he did what Belle couldn't and took her out with a single punch. Meanwhile, Makoto soon woke up to find herself being carried by Lord Take. She wondered why they were all there and revealed that she had an idea where Belle was. At that end, Belle was trying his best to parry Isa. Although he got a level boost, Isa wasn't going to just let him waltz out of there with Haruhime. So she explained to him how people would always attempt to take her power for their own, but Belle wasn't trying to hear all that. Even after the level boost wore off, he still kept up with Aisha. Meanwhile, Ishtar was crashing out wondering why Freya had just destroyed the whole red light district for Belle. But she could just ask her herself as Freya appeared out of nowhere, looking like she came for a dance and not a fight. Ishtar's last 2 girls tried to save her, but they got instantly charmed by Freya. Ishtar tried to apologize, but like the ultimate tsundere, Freya told Ishtar that any woman who tried to make a move on Belle would be punished, including her. Meanwhile, Hermes was just enjoying the show and honestly didn't expect that things would turn out like that, but was glad they did. Belle, who was still fighting Aisha, held his own until she decided she wasn't going to play fair anymore, and used a power-up spell. Belle, on the other hand, decided to charge up his Argonaut skill for a last stand against Azucha. Meanwhile, Asfi asked why everyone seemed to be going extreme for Belle, and Hermes replied that they were going to make Belle the last of the great heroes. Back at the fight, Azu tried to finally take out Belle, but he countered and the clash broke both of their swords. Belle rushed Azucha and dropped his final attack right in her stomach, defeating her and saving Haruhime. Meanwhile, Ishtar was running up straight somewhere in the building trying to get away from Freya, but the stairs suddenly cut off and there was nowhere left for her to go. Like a horror movie villain, Freya walked slowly towards Ishtar, making sure everyone heard each step she took. Ishtar saw the last one of her men and thought she still stood a chance, so so she taunted Freya by telling her that divine charms wouldn't work on Belle. This intrigued Freya, but she didn't really care, so she turned Ishtar's last man against her and slapped her so hard that she blacked out just like the rest of her familia. Off in the distance, a large army calling themselves the Rekia Empire prepared for battle with none other than Orario. The army rushed into battle, and just one man stood between them and glory. Unfortunately for them, the man had a giant axe, and heroes with big axes were always overpowered. Injured soldiers poured into their general's tent and told him how they're getting absolutely cooked in the battlefield. Meanwhile, Haruhime told Aisha goodbye at the entrance of the Hestia Familia mansion and thanked her for everything she had done for her so far. When Belle asked Aisha what she was going to do moving on, she claimed she was going to see the Rekia army ranks. Belle of course didn't know what that was, so they had to explain to him that they're a big army led by Lord Ares, but they were no match for any adventurer and ended up being fodder in the war. Aisha told Haruhime that now she was free to practically do whatever she wanted and made Belle understand that she was now his responsibility. When Aisha joined her friends, they talked about how Haruhime never actually worked out with anybody. Later that day, Belle met up with Hermes at the pub and filled him in on how he had one extra girlfriend now. Hermes was glad Belle was safe, and Belle thanked him for the tip about the Slaystone. Hermes couldn't handle the glaze and insisted his efforts played most of the part. After that, Hermes started yapping about the 3 great quests. Apparently, a hero had to find 3 monsters that escaped from dungeons a long time ago. 2 of the monsters, Behemoth and Leviathan, had already been defeated a long time ago by 2 of the strongest families to ever exist, the Zeus and Hera Familias. They 2 familias teamed up to take on the 3rd monster, but they all got deleted with the control button. The last monster was a fairy tale monster, a giant one-eyed black dragon, deep in dungeon oratoria. But Hermes claimed it was not just a fairy tale, as the dragon really did exist, and that the world still needed its hero. Elsewhere, Ares was crashing out since his armies were being bodied in battle. Ares' assistant Maruis told him straight that they are fodder for Orario adventurers, and they too started bickering. Back at the Hestia Familia mansion, Haruhime had become a maid, and Belle walked in on her talking about how it must be hard for her to do laundry for 6 people. So he tried to help but accidentally picked up some plot armor from the basket. Hestia got super jealous about how close Belle and Haruhime were getting, so she banned men and women from touching in her familia. A few minutes later, Lily and Hestia were arguing about what happened when Welf walked in, confused as he had no clue what was going on. Lily called Hestia on her BS, claiming she just wanted Belle to herself. So Hestia took out the touching rule but said no flirting instead. But because of Makoto and Welf, she decided that love between gods and humans was totally valid. Lily called her out again, but she just brushed her off and asked Belle if he would be open to some god on human romance. But Belle avoided the question like child support, causing Hestia's heart to be shattered, so she ran off. Meanwhile, Belle, being a Chad who knew nothing about romance, was confused, but after some explaining from his friends, realized he messed up badly and went to find Hestia. Elsewhere, traders from Orario turned the battlegrounds into their spawning grounds and kept popping up everywhere to sell goods made in Orario to the soldiers and travelers. Isa was busy though, looking for a perfect man to soothe her appetite, but they were all trash. After hearing that a general was nearby, Isa and her girls decided to jump him. Meanwhile, Ares was cooking the dumbest strategy in war history and thought maybe it would be a good idea to raid a town full of gods and adventures that could one-shot everyone in his army. But before Marius could even talk some sense into him, Ares ran off. Elsewhere, Belle was busy walking around the streets of Orario looking for Hestia when he ran into Miak and Lady Hephaestus, and they offered to hear him out since they didn't know where Hestia was. When Belle sat down with the 2 gods and asked them if gods ever fell in love with mortals, they smiled a bit and told Belle that even if the love may differ, that all gods loved their children, and that included romantic love. Belle tried to explain how gods and mortals were completely different, but Miak smiled and asked him what he was really afraid of. They both advised Belle that if a god ever tried to get with him, that he should consider accepting it without any second thoughts, even if he loved someone else. Meanwhile, Hestia was completely crashing out about how highly Belle regarded gods and how he flat out rejected her. As Hestia was crashing out, she got called by an NPC and ended up sucked into a side quest. Meanwhile, Ares and Marius were outside the city walls trying to sneak in without anyone noticing. Marius called Ares an idiot for thinking that a god would just randomly appear for him to kidnap them easily. But then Hestia actually showed up, and just like Ares was expecting, so he kidnapped a god and dips. A little bit later, Belle leave Miak and Lady Hephaestus after receiving some advices on how to get with gods and saw Ais running somewhere. He followed her to meet up with Loki and Finn, where she filled him in on what happened. Loki confirmed that Hestia was captured, and it was all thanks to Ganesha letting her out of the gate. Finn dropped some bad news on how they couldn't send out a search team because the kidnappers split up and they didn't know who had Hestia. And even worse, they were more familiar with the roads outside of Orario. Ais tried to volunteer herself as tribute, and since she's the strongest, there was no one better. However, Belle couldn't let her do all the work, so he decided to join her, and even Hermes lent a hand and sent Osfi to help them find Hestia. Immediately, Belle and Ais went into the rain and began their search for Hestia by following a flashing light in the sky. After some time, they caught up to Ares and his men and got ready for battle, and Osfi then revealed herself as the one holding the lantern to build them in the sky. Ares thought he could engage Ais. Unfortunately, Ais was levels above him and easily broke his sword like stale bread. Just then, Belle snuck up behind Ares and tried to grab Hestia, but unfortunately Hestia slipped and fell off the ledge, and Belle without thinking dived after her, and so did Ais, leaving only Alfie to deal with Ares' men. In a random house in the middle of nowhere, Hestia was laying in a bed with Belle by her side, waiting for her to wake up. Belle got her some water and told her that they're in a village in the valley, adding that they were in the chief's house. Apparently, before they could kick the bucket, Ayaz jumped in and saved them. Soon the grandpa-looking chief, who looked like he was about to croak, showed up to check on Hestia. Hestia asked him to let them stay in the village for a little longer, and he took it a step further and offered his daughter Rina as tribute. Later that night, after Hestia went back to bed, Ayaz came back from scouting soaked, but with news that she didn't see either the Rekia army or Asfi. Belle, feeling a little hot and bothered, asked Ayaz to allow them to stay a little longer in the house. Meanwhile, Grandpa Com, the village chief, was looking at an old emblem when he nearly clicks his reset button just by coughing, so Rina rushed in to save him in time. Old man Com managed to convince his daughter that he was alright, that she should get some sleep and check up on Hestia, then he went back to looking at the emblem he had before. The next day soon came, and Belle was feeding the sick Hestia, which she couldn't be more happy about. Rina came in and informed Belle and Hestia about a festival they're having later that day, so Hestia told Belle to go outside and be free labor for a while. While Belle was going out, he saw Eyes in some sus outfit and struggled to control himself, but she decided to join him outside while he helped the villagers. After lifting some logs with the townsfolk, Belle took a stroll and ended up seeing the black dragon scale in a small shrine. He instantly remembered his discussion with Hermes about the 3 great quests, and how the black dragon was the last one. The villagers there explained to Belle how they worship the black dragon scales, since it scared away monsters, and promised that they're not in a cult. Just then, Belle saw Ayaz off in the corner, meaning mugging one of the scales, as she obviously had some bad experiences with it in the past. When Belle got back to the house, he found Mr. Com acting very uncultured and staring at Hestia in her sleep. Unfortunately, Belle didn't put hand on senior citizens, so he decided to listen to what the old geezer had to say. Mr. Com then explained how he used to be in love with a goddess, but he was too weak to protect her, so when they were cornered, she sacrificed herself to protect him, and there was nothing he could do. He survived the whole thing, but his goddess lover was sent back to heaven, and he couldn't just throw away the life she struggled to save by pressing his reset button and joining her there. He added that Rina wasn't his actual daughter and how he adopted her from the village. Mr. Com tried to give Belle more advice, but then he started coughing like an old beat-up Toyota and begged Belle to take care of Hestia, so he won't have the same regrets as him. Meanwhile, Hestia was starting to get better, but she wanted to keep playing sick so Belle could pamper her more. When Ayaz walked into the room to bring Hestia and supper, Hestia questioned her, trying to find out how she really felt about Belle, but Ayaz just straight up called him a bunny, and Hestia couldn't be happier. Later that night, Belle, Hestia, and Ayaz decided to go out and enjoy the village festival, so they all took a stroll down there. Once Hestia came, the villagers started something called the Prosperity Dance, and guys used the dance as an unofficial way to ask out their crush. Hestia saw this as the perfect opportunity to finally get Belle, so she made him ask her for a dance. As Belle danced with Hestia, couldn't get his mind off the conversations he had with Miak, Hephaestus, and Mr. Com. Just as he was thinking, Rina came rushing in with some bad news about Grandpa Com. Immediately everyone rushed to see the old geezer, and Hestia held his hand as he shuffled over to the Shadow Realm. Com asked her if he would ever see Lady Brigid, the goddess that he fell in love with, again, and Hestia promised him that Brigid didn't like giving up and that she would find him again. After comforting him, Com saw a vision of Brigid and permanently logged out of the server, making everyone in the village very emotional and teary. Later that night, Belle went to the forest for a bit of fresh air, and Hestia came to join him. Belle told Hestia how he couldn't bear the thought of losing her, but Hestia promised him that no matter what, even if he got old and wrinkly, she would always be with him, and that she would never leave him. This made him cry, so Hestia tried to comfort him by putting his head on her 2x chest stats, with Arata watching them in the background. The next day they leave the village and head back to Arario, where Hestia as usual got jealous of A's wanting to come back to the village sometime with Belle. When they got back to Arario, everyone went back to their Familia and Ares got caught as well. Do you think Hestia stands a chance with a cheek magnet like Belle and would get over A's? Leave a comment. And don't forget to check this video if you like recaps like this.